Kaha, olai kawai, olai kai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Olai kaha, olai kawai, olai kai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Olai kaha, olai kawai, olai kai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii.
Mahalo. Okay, so we've had a few substitutions for today's meeting because people are having various health challenges and whatnot as the result of, all of the toxic exposures we've. So look forward to introducing a few new people, new faces. I'll start. My name is Marty Townsend. I am the reluctant chair of this hodgepodge team of community outreach people, and I am in an at-large seat. Go ahead.
Aloha, my name is Helani Sonora Pale. I am the representative for the Native Hawaiian, aka Kanaka Maoli community. Mahalo.
Aloha, Ilima de Costa. I am a Oahu at-large member. Mahalo.
And I represent the organization of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party. Aloha.
Empty chair.
Actually, if we can go to the CRI members that are on Zoom, Mia Lisa and Jamie.
Hi, I'm Mia Lisa at large. Mahalo.
Thank you, Jamie.
Aloha, I'm Jamie Simic, affected family member filling in for Mandy Fine.
Thank you. Natalia.
Aloha, Natalia Hasi Burdick, at-large community member representing an organization, Sierra Club.
Thank you. And Auntie Peggy. You're still muted.
Okay. Hi. Better?
Perfect.
I'm Peggy Wagner. I'm an affected community member. I live in Capelina Beach Homes. I did when the water happened, and I still live here. I think we're very underrepresented, but I'm here tonight to help out with the registry on behalf of Tara and my daughter Stephanie, who is a member of the registry team.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've had to update the agenda a little bit. We're going to start with just a quick conversation, a few minutes about navigating the uncertainty that we are living through right now. So there's a lot going on, and change is scary. I definitely don't like change, and one of the things that helps me in trying to manage these feelings, is I take a step back and I recognize that the status quo wasn't exactly great either. And so while change is uncomfortable, change is necessary and something that we need. The issues that we are confronting as the CRI and as a community here in Hawaii go far deeper than any political affiliations, political parties, or anything like that. This is about our water. Something that all of us need, regardless of who we are and what we do and what we believe in. And it helps me to remember that it was under the status quo that the fuel depot was installed over our water supply, which was a horrible idea. It was under the status quo that the fire suppression system was, poorly installed, made of plastic and filled with fuel. And it was under the status quo that 93,000 people were poisoned and continue to be exposed to pollution in their water supply. And it was under the status quo that we got a master class in gaslighting by our own government. So it's with that kind of recognition and background that I want to invite Ann Wright, who is a internationally renowned advocate for peace, justice, and public health, to help us walk through some of the ways in which we can navigate these uncertain times. Thank you.
29 years in the Army and Army Reserves, and then a U.S. diplomat for 16 years. And I resigned in opposition to the war on Iraq in 2003. And that's when I moved to Hawaii. And I've been a resident here in Honolulu for the past almost 25 years now. I too was a part of the citizen activism to challenge the Navy's comments on Red Hill starting in 2014. And then when the horrific, 20,000 gallons of jet fuel went into the water supply, was one of the folks that, with many of the people here at the table and around that are listening, and that challenged the Navy. And I would say that the challenge that we were able to have here in Honolulu to the Department of Defense, the Department of the Navy, was one of the unique and successful challenges that the U.S. military has had. I mean, that the Secretary of Defense finally, after we got our own congressional delegation to finally say, yes, that place needs to be closed down, that Red Hill tanks need to be closed down, then finally the Secretary of Defense closed it down. And then we embarked on several years of trying to get the fuel out of there, and now the tanks cleaned. And while all of this was going on, the numbers of local groups that we had that were relentless, just relentless in going out to the Pacific Fleet headquarters and having demonstrations there, having them at the state capitol, having them at the Board of Water Supply. It really is a credit to the activism of the families that were affected directly by this and all of the community that was affected. Because when anything happens in our community, it's not just the person that it happens to, but it's all the neighbors, all the friends, and everybody that's concerned about our water. And it's not only locally that concern was, internationally, and as Marty said, I do a lot of traveling internationally and working on issues of demilitarization, of trying to get peace in the world, which is tough. But it was amazing that what happened here is known throughout the world, and the activism to get the U.S. military to back off one of the things that they refused to back off on for decades, which was the closing of those Red Hill tanks. And we have a lot of international organizations that anytime things happen here, they make sure that their communities all over the world know about it. I'm part of a national and international group called Veterans for Peace. And we feel like as veterans, we have the kuleana to say to our own military, because we've been a part of it, you've got to do better. You've got to do better in the communities where we are. And it's just not here in Hawaii, but if you know of all of the things that have happened on military bases all over the world. And I think later on in the program, we'll have a presentation on PFAS and the PFAS that's been found in Guam and Okinawa, many bases in mainland Japan, in South Korea, in Germany, in Italy, in Greece. All of these types of military poisons, whether it's PFAS, whether it's fuel in the water supply, whether it was Agent Orange going back to the days of the Vietnam War. And all of these things are issues that we want to be continuing to push during this very difficult time. I mean, as Marty mentioned, we're not too sure how things are going to pan out in terms of what's going to happen to a lot of the federal agencies that we have. What reductions in force are there going to be? The EPA, we have no idea how much, if it will exist even. We know that there are at least budget cuts in the Department of Defense, but whether those cuts are actually cuts or they're just moving parts of the budget into different areas and calling a movement a reduction, when in fact it's not really a reduction. But these are the things that on the national and then the international scale, where we have a lot of organizations. One, Nonviolence International, World Can't Wait, World Beyond War, Stop Military Poisons, Stop the War Coalition, Code Pink Women for Peace that I work a lot with, going into the Congress to challenge our members of Congress on what their stances are on issues that we feel they're going the wrong way. And sometimes it's a pretty frank and brutal challenge, but it's important that the voices of us as citizens are heard, whether it's here locally in Honolulu, whether it's nationally within the United States or internationally. It is really important that we keep things up, that we don't let this issue, which is still very, very important and to our community members that are still affected by the jet fuel poisoning. And we have to be on our alert for anything else that could happen, where here in the Pacific Command, the Indo-Pacific Command will be getting the largest amount of DOD money than any of the unified commands. And the huge level of construction that's going to be going on here. And with all construction projects, there are the potential of pollution and disaster to our very fragile community here. So we've got a big job ahead of us, and we don't know quite the route that the national government is going to be taking on things, but it probably is not going to be very good for us in our own environment. So all the more reason that we as community members must be vigilant and be ready to keep going after them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Anne? I just want to get your advice and suggest, you're famous. And so like when you call up Code Pink, right, they'll take your call. But for regular people who are not famous, if we wanted to connect with some of these organizations, do you have any suggestions, advice?
Well, surely. I mean, the fact that shut down Red Hill, it has its own name. It has an international name. And if you say you are part of Shut Down Red Hill, all of these organizations will know who you are and what you represent. So don't be afraid at all to contact any of these national or international organizations, because they know what we've been through here as a community, and they know the battle that we fought and the success that we've had on one level of closing down those underground tanks. And it's not very often that there are any successes when you're up against environmental pollution of the U.S. military. So I'd say that use the moniker of, shut down Red Hill, be very upfront about it and be very proud of it and push it hard for whatever thing that you can think of. And we have up on the video right now some of the names and the websites for some of the organizations that are already knowledgeable, very knowledgeable about Shut Down Red Hill, and are willing to help at any moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that, as part of the uncertainty, it's possible that the Community Representation Initiative, this may be our last meeting. We don't know. We are asking for the Department of Defense to meet with us on March 27th. That's the next fourth Thursday of the month. And so we are planning to be here and hoping that the Navy and the EPA will join us. But as we have seen with the executive orders, swift decision-making, it's possible they may, pull out of this administrative order on consent. They could do any number of things. And so in the event that, we aren't here next month, we wanted to make sure that people had resources that they could use to just stay engaged, right? I think as Auntie Anne said, like the main thing is to stay engaged, right? We need to understand that you need to understand what your interests are, right? Like it's hard sometimes to really tell what's going on with all of the noise around politics. Take a moment to center yourself and understand what is really in your own best interest, and then look for those people who share those interests and connect with them. Focus on local organizations, neighbors, friends, and family, because we have demonstrated to ourselves multiple disasters, right? Not only Red Hill, but after hurricanes, after the wildfire in Lahaina, we have demonstrated that when crisis strikes, our community comes together, and it's us who takes care of us. So please, I implore people to build those connections. And then also to reach out to helpers, right? I got this from Mr. Rogers when I was a kid, and he was like trying to counsel us through, some scary event. And he says, whenever you are, in a crisis situation, look for the helpers. And so you find people, organizations who are helping, and help them. And I think the main thing for us to remember is to not fight each other, right? We all need clean water, right? This is not an us versus them situation, right? As much as I am angry with the military for putting us in this situation, as much as it pains me to say, I told you so, how many times, I recognize that they need water as much as I need water. And so we need to make sure that that is the thing that brings us all together and keeps us together. So yes, resources here, Board of Water Supply at the top of the list. Also, there's several other organizations that are maintaining Red Hill information online. And most of these are not affected by the federal government or the state government. And so they will likely endure well beyond. I will put a plug in for Auntie Anne's Daily Digest. If you would like to join that, it's a daily email of news and events and updates. You can email that address on the screen and get added there. And then if you could cycle through the other slides also on this, just wanted to highlight. So here are some of the local organizations that have been working with us with the Shutdown Red Hill Coalition. And then there's the next page that are the international allies that Auntie Anne mentioned. All right, anything else on this particular topic? You guys have questions or comments? Go ahead, Melody.
Okay, thank you very much. I know, Anne, you're going to be leaving soon, and you're going to go and protest in DC, I believe. So I guess with that, what is your opinion? What is the current state of U.S. policy, foreign policy, and its impact on global peace?
Oh, God. What a question. Well, our new president, Trump, says that he wants to end the war on Ukraine and Russia, and that's good. And it's very interesting to see what he is going after as far as the Ukrainian mineral resources as a part of this. But to have the killing end between Russia and Ukraine is very important. On the issue of Gaza and the genocide going on in Gaza, the ceasefire is still holding, and that came about because President Trump put his weight behind the need to stop the killing there. Now, we will see whether or not that will hold. But at the same time, in the West Bank of Palestine, there is an ethnic cleansing that's going on that's not stopping at all. In Africa, the Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo are both having very, very difficult times, and starvation that's going on in both of those, and violence. Here in the Asia and the Pacific, the rhetoric about a potential military conflict with China still continues, and it comes out a lot from right here with the Indo-Pacific Command. So it's a very difficult time, and I think we all want, while certainly there should be economic competition between countries, but military competition does not help us at all. And we certainly hope that the Trump administration will not continue what happened during the Biden administration, which was a much more aggressive foreign policy on China, although the Trump administration already has more sanctions on China. So the world is not a peaceful world, but it doesn't mean that we have to stop working for it. We have to, at every avenue, and I do spend a lot of time in Washington at the U.S. Congress, and going to office to office to office every day with a different fact sheet of things that we want the Congress people to be aware of. And it's a brutal place. It's a mean place. There are a lot of congressmen and women that say things about peace and things about killing that you just cannot believe they're coming out of the representatives of states, and that they're being said in the halls of Congress. So that's one of the reasons we have little cameras and we take videos of this, because the people need to know what our representatives are saying. I will say that we are very lucky here in Hawaii that we have very good congressional representation, and particularly our two senators have been very, very strong on trying to get peace going on in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Yeah, go ahead. Nima.
And some of the changes. So it doesn't seem like they're getting rid of the EPA. They're just going to be adapting it in a way that maybe might be more business friendly, corporate friendly, maybe even more states' rights friendly. So I don't know if you heard recently about the new order that's coming out for West Virginia. They're going to be allowed to basically have more control, more authority over what happens to their environment. I'm wondering what you think about that, if you've heard of that, and how you feel about efforts here locally to try and expand states' rights here so that we have more control over our environment and our resources.
Well, a state's right control over its environment is a good thing if they're really trying to help the environment. I think what we're seeing now is that there are a lot of big businessmen and women who have contributed to political campaigns and are wanting their quid pro quo back. And many of them are part of organizations and corporations that the EPA has has said what you're doing is not good for the environment. And the regulations that the EPA has had for water, for the air, for the land have been useful in keeping us alive. And I am fearful that the current administration is going to be having some very detrimental policies. And some of the states will like that because they are fine with continuing coal mining or continuing floods in their areas or continuing whatever, drilling for oil and then ready to mop up their beaches as the offshore oil wells spill or, whatever. But I personally am horrified as we see some of the organizations, the federal government agencies that are being really stripped of any sort of regulatory authority, which is an authority that really helps the health and welfare of our citizenry.
Thanks very much. Do you think there's any opportunity for us here in Hawaii to take advantage of this and, go in an opposite direction from, say, West Virginia?
Well, sure. I think this is a great time for the state of Hawaii to step up and really have some even better protections for our environment. And Hawaii could be a leader in that. Hawaii could say, hey, you all in West Virginia or North Dakota, you may be ruining the environment for your people, but for our people here, we are making sure that the water is cleaner, the air is cleaner. I don't know that we can do much about the bog from the volcano today, which has been pretty bad, but there are a lot of things that we can do to protect the fishing industries or protect the fish so that industries can continue, but in an environmentally sensitive way. So I think Hawaii does have a great opportunity to be a leader in showing other states that if you really care for the health and welfare of your own citizenry, you need to have some regulations on corporate stuff. Thank you.
Questions on this? We good? All right, we can, the next topic that we're moving to is PFAS. I'm not going to attempt to say the long chemical name. These are the forever chemicals that are now present in our water as a result of the AFFF foam being released at Red Hill. So this is one topic that the Department of Defense feels is outside the scope of our jurisdiction as the Community Representation Initiative for Red Hill. And we firmly disagree with them. They're not here today, so we're going to talk about it. We're going to start first with Joyce from the Board of Water Supply. She has been following this and working alongside us on this ever since the 2021 leak. And so she has a little bit of a presentation to go through. And then we will move to Mark next. Mark is also with the Board of Water Supply and has been working specifically on PFAS contamination in the groundwater supply. Right? Okay, cool. And then we have online Emily, who is from the University of Hawaii. She's with the Water Resources Research Center. Thank you. So many C choices. Anyway, and she's going to be available to answer any of our questions related to PFAS as it's showing up in streams and springs and things of that nature. Joyce, if you're ready, go ahead. And your slides are up. Thanks. Maybe a little closer or a little louder, one or both. I think it's, I don't know, I'm looking at Alella to make sure it's good. Is it, the light is green?
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Perfect.
Thank you, Chair and CRI member. I'm Joyce Lin with the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Thank you so much for the opportunity tonight to present and provide a brief on this Red Hill remediation journey that we've been on. I'm an engineer working under Ernie and Erwin on Red Hill projects. This presentation was actually presented at the recent Pacific Water Conference, and I just want to preface that this presentation is actually more of a highlight overview of Red Hill. So a lot of you might find a lot of this information already redundant or overspoken, but I hope you can just give me a little bit of patience and grace as I have to go through the same slides again, just kind of like a refresher for all of us.
I'm in the military housing, so this will be great, please.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize in advance if I pronounce some Hawaiian words incorrectly and so thank you.
We all do the best we can.
Yeah. So next slide, please. So we have a few sayings here in Hawaii, Ue kalani ola kahunua, which means that when the heaven weeps, the earth lives. So we believe that life on earth is dependent on the blessing of rain. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Ola ikawai. Water is life. Water sustains us, and it is intertwined with every aspect of our lives. Wai means water, and Hawaiians felt that wai is such a prized resource that wai means wealth in Hawaiian. Next slide, please. Kikioka aina. We are children of this sacred land. This aina, this land, is where we call home. Our Hawaiian Islands were discovered by Polynesians thousands of years ago when they navigated through the open Pacific. It is here that they anchored their hopes for the next generations. Next slide, please. And with time and Lalima, we created a thriving community for ourselves, a mixture of modern urbanization and continued efforts in preservation of our natural resources. Our islands have become a melting pot of cultures, history, and people from all walks of life from all around the world. Next slide, please. We, the Board of Water Supply, is the primary municipal water utility for Oahu residents and our visitors, serving an average of 145 million gallons of water every single day. Oahu is very unique, where 100% of our drinking water comes from groundwater sources that taps into our source aquifer. Next slide. What is a source aquifer, you ask? Well, although there are different regions across our island of Oahu, there are no actual real closed off boundaries at those dotted yellow lines that you see. There is only one aquifer located within the inner green portion of the island. This is where our watershed is most prominent in capturing our drinking water and rainwater. Next slide. And so following the typical water cycle, rain falls and is filtered through the layers of tree canopies, grass, soil, volcanic rocks, and eventually making its way to the zone of fresh water. This is where we call it our aquifer. The yellow cap rocks are like dams that hold the fresh water in and the seawater out. Wells, shafts, and tunnels are sources that we use to bring fresh drinking water into our homes. Next slide, please. So to ensure checks and balances on our natural water resources, the State Department of Land and Natural Resources Commission on Water Resource helps to oversee the quantity of water being pumped out of our aquifer, while the State Department of Health oversees the water quality aspect. And if you, sorry, it's not there, but the Red Hill facility is located right at the boundary between the Waimalu portion of the aquifer and the Honolulu aquifer.
So the purple part
Yep,
and the
it's right
pink part.
right at the boundary between the purple and the pink. Next slide, please. And so located between Mauna Valley on the right, your right, and Halawa Valley to the left is Red Hill. This is where the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility is located. Strategically carved underground, 20 pill-shaped tank sits just 100 feet above our drinking water aquifer. These tanks are 100 feet across, 250 feet in height. And just for reference, Aloha Tower and the Statue of Liberty can fit in one of these tanks. It is recognized as a civil engineering marvel that helped supply fuel for our military during, since World War II. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, with a total capacity of 250 million gallons, it is estimated that up to 1.9 million gallons of fuel was released from the facility in its 80 years of operation. Where to, we do not know. What we do know is that people are still feeling the effects from the November 2021 incident. What we do know is that the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility is a risk to our Vai and our Aina. Next slide, please. And as a result of the November 2021 fuel spill event, the Board of Water Supply stopped pumping our 3 nearby wells, the Halawa Shaft, Aiea Wells, and Halawa Wells. And it's fortunate that we did so because based on the latest groundwater model simulation put together by the Navy in 2024, if Halawa Shaft continued operating at 12 million gallons per day, contaminants could have gotten into our drinking water system as shown in the light green dotted lines. Next slide, please. 1 year after the 2021 fuel spill that contaminated the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickams drinking water system, another incident occurred at the Red Hill facility. 1,300 gallons of aqueous film forming foam concentrate, or AFFF, that are used for fire suppression was accidentally released into the environment. And within AFFF are chemicals known as forever chemicals, PFAS. Next slide, please. PFAS are now regulated under EPA's final National Primary Drinking Water Regulation. After years of extensive research, science have shown that exposure to PFAS, or at least these 6 PFAS, is linked to significant health risks, such as cancers, developmental effects in children, and compromised immunity, just to name a few. Next slide, please. And PFAS can easily travel through our water cycle because it is highly water soluble. It dissolves very easily in water. They are everywhere in our environment because it is widely used in the production of everyday household items like nonstick pans, waterproof and water-resistant clothes, and also food containers. And in this diagram, you can see how discharges from various PFAS sources can create a continuous forever cycle between the industries, wastewater treatment plant effluent, biosolid fertilizers, and even our food. Next slide, please. So in 2022, a decision to close down the Red Hill facility was made. And in 2023, about 104 million gallons of fuel was gravity defueled from the fuel facility, and it was relocated to different military facilities across the Pacific Rim. This removed a huge threat over our drinking water supply. However, there is still a lot of work to be done, such as removing the remnant fuel and sludge at the bottom of the fuel tanks, dismantling the 10 miles of fuel pipelines, effectively identifying the nature and extent of all the contaminants released over the past 80 years, and also to clean up our vai and our aina. Next slide, please. It's been about 11 years since the Board of Water Supply learned about the Red Hill facility. It has not been an easy journey, but we had a lot of help from all of our wonderful community members, the CRI included. A big mahalo to all of our community and nonprofit groups. We would not have made the progress in defueling and plans in closure had it not been for your advocacy. And to all of you here today, continuing your voice and meeting. Thank you, mahalo. Next slide, please. And with the support of our community, the Red Hill vai was established in May 2023. Leaders of elected offices from the federal, state, and city level, such as our governor, our city's mayor, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, Chair of the Board of Land and Natural Resources, President of the UH Manoa, and of course, Board of Water Supply, we all came together and created one voice and a call to remediate our vai. Next slide. So in collaboration with the federal, state, and city elected officials, the Red Hill vai report was penned to outline a path forward in reaching our goal of clean and fresh water now and into our future. The focus of the Red Hill vai is to remediate fuel and contaminants that are in the ground between the bottoms of the tanks and the top of our drinking water aquifer table. Next slide. Some of the common questions that we get are, where are the contaminants going? In which direction? Did the contaminants float away, or did it dissolve and sunken down lower into the aquifer? And to be honest, we're not too sure. One of the priorities of the Red Hill vai is to actually establish a monitoring well network that could help provide enough data points for us to monitor groundwater movement and groundwater quality. Next slide, please. So full remediation will take some time. One of the many things that I've learned in my journey working on Red Hill is that progress takes time, and outreach and education is so crucial. From here, we need to find a way to keep up the momentum towards remediation, pass on institutional knowledge to the next generation so that they can keep up on the remediation work for years to come. And just because the fuel is now out of the tanks, it does not mean that the fuel is completely gone from our aina and our water. By understanding what happened in the past, we could make better decisions moving forward. Next slide, please. So just a few takeaways from the little talks of mine just now. Let us be kia vai, or protectors of our water. Water is a human right, and it is everyone's kuleana to protect the vai. Next slide. And so also, we can also please stay, just stay informed. Feel free to reach out to the Board of Water Supply or me, and I put on here all the different organizations that are also great resources in finding information about Red Hill and keeping up with the Red Hill remediation progress. Next slide, please. And also just support the Red Hill Vi whenever you can. And if you're available, the Red Hill Vi is live in this legislation session. Listed here are just some of the few bills related to water and land that the Board of Water Supply have been monitoring and tracking. And it focuses on building permanent structure and keeping the momentum going on remediation of our water. Thank you. And just in closing, I just want to say thank you, mahalo to all of you here. Yeah, thank you for all the work that you do. Mahalo.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, we can slide right into, Mark, do you have a presentation? No obligation. No?
I'll go ahead. All right. Good evening, members of the CRI chair, and also any members that are out there watching in Zoom. My name is Mark Chun. I am an engineer within the Water Resources Division of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. I want to start off with, I guess, some caveats. I mean, I'm here to talk about the EIEC, or the Environmental Investigation of Emerging Contaminants. And the caveats being this is that I am not a PFAS expert. I'll just kind of lay it that way. I'm a project engineer for this particular project. It's also been done in conjunction with our consultant, Brown and Caldwell, and they actually have our subject matter experts. A lot of the slides, in fact, all of the slides that you'll be seeing tonight were worked on with them for a couple of conferences that we had. And I'll just do my best to go ahead and give an overview of the entire project. The project is Environmental Investigation of Emerging Contaminants, but it has definitely a focus on PFAS. The other caveat is that it's not specifically about Red Hill. I mean, I thank you for this audience here, but it's not specifically for Red Hill. Just want to make sure that we're all aware of that part.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide, please. So tonight, I'll just briefly go over the project drivers for this project, the scope, section treatment evaluation, and just some conclusions and next steps for this project. Next slide, please. You folks are all well versed on PFAS. I know I've heard a lot of what's been going on. Joyce herself just talked about a lot of it there. And so it's not my intent to go over all of that and inform you folks about that. You already know that. But what does come to mind is a word that came out during COVID-19 that was used all over the news. And the word was unprecedented. Like, you never really use that word, unprecedented. But with PFAS, I noticed the word that comes out a lot is ubiquitous. Ubiquitous, like it's everywhere, it's all over the place. And as Joyce had mentioned, it is in everything that we could possibly think of. It was viewed as perhaps the miracle chemical at that time until we found out it was bad. So the point is that it is all around. And the purpose of this slide is just to emphasize the fact that all of our water is related, whether it's the wastewater, whether it's naturally from streams, so all of our water somehow comes around. And so if this ubiquitous chemical is out there, it's somehow going to get all over the place, and we should be concerned about it. Now, we, of course, as the Board of Water Supply, they want to make sure that we can continue providing safe, dependable, and affordable water now into the future. And so that's really one of the things that this project is all about. So what is driving this project? Next slide, please. What is driving this project? There's actually four main things for this project. One is the EPA ruling. The second one is PFAS detections at multiple well sites. Again, it is ubiquitous, so we have seen it. The Honolulu Board of Water Supply views itself as stewards and protectors of the pristine waters of Oahu. I think you folks are very well aware of that. And of course, there's public's expectations. So let me kind of go through these things. The first driver, next slide, of course, is the MCLs that are going to be enforced in April 2029. And you folks know the numbers. You've seen it in many different presentations. Bottom line for us, we have to meet these requirements. And as Auntie Anne has talked about, we want to make sure that we provide safe water. And so we have to make sure we hit these numbers here. The second driver has to do, again, with the word ubiquitous. Like I said, it's all over the place. And so we have had some detection in some of our wells. Fortunately, they're been below the MCL. And the few times that maybe we saw a number go above it was just sporadic. That's kind of an interesting nature about PFAS, that we can measure it so small, yet the amount that you can measure is so close to the MCL that it just jumps around so much. But it's, aside from those few sporadic ones, it's been below the MCL across the board. Nevertheless, we want to go ahead and take action now in case it does go bad later on. Next slide, please. The third driver, as you know, we view ourselves as the stewards and protectors. And so we gotta end up asking our question. And we could have gone with just the blinders on, saying that, hey, we know there's PFAS here, we're just gonna do this mitigation here, and that's it. Walk away from it. But viewing ourselves as the stewards and protectors, we gotta ask these extra questions, like where is this PFAS coming from? And where should we be concerned about for our future? And finally, related to that is the fourth driver, is the public expectation. And this CRI, I think, is a formal example of such a thing, that there's got to be awareness of what the threat is. We have to have transparency of what's going on. And you want to ultimately have trust in the agency, whether it be the Board of Water Supply or any other agency that's here to go ahead and provide clean water. So all of these drivers are shaping this project as we move forward to understand and tackle this issue. And as our manager said, Ernie Lau said in October, next slide, please. I'll just go ahead and quote it. He said this it was quoted in the Honolulu Star Advertiser. We cannot change the past, but we must recognize that our decisions and actions today can shape the future. Today, we are without excuse. We know better. We have a wealth of knowledge to guide decisions to help ensure our Aina will be safe and habitable for future generations. And it's powerful words there. So all that you heard of the drivers, as well as Ernie's passion, as you folks are well aware of, all of these result in what our project scope will be for this fairly large and complex project. Next slide, please. What ends up being is a multi-track project. Could almost be viewed as several different projects all rolled into one. I'm just don't worry about all the different lines there, but really three major parts. The orange part is to develop a program framework. The second part is to address the high priority sites. And these are the ones that have detections. And obviously, we got to go ahead and make things get into place by April 2029, that we're going to have to shut those guys down if they go above MCL. So, and then we have the third one is our island-wide mitigation plan, which kind of expands it, because we have our wells, the high priority ones that had detections, but now what about all the rest of the wells? We know this stuff is all over the place where we have to be worried about. And so that's going to look at that side of it. Next slide, please. So if we just focus on the orange part, the purpose of this is to establish kind of a sustained PFAS mentality in the Board of Water Supply. It's not that we don't care, but it's just something new. It's just a lot of new things coming out there. As you folks know, there's just thousands of different PFAS. They've only regulated a small amount, as they're still trying to figure out what exactly is it that we have to take care of. Back in the 80s, a similar thing came up when we had TCP show up in the water out because of the agriculture fields. We kind of had to get a new framework of, okay, how do we handle that? Same thing here now. We have a slightly different contaminant. What are the different processes we need now? So we got to make sure that everybody is in line within the Board of Water Supply on that. It has to carry on beyond our immediate effort, because this is going to be a many year thing. And I'd have to say probably I'd retire before we're done with all of this. So we have to make sure the next group goes ahead and works on this too. Next slide, please. So just an example of some of our workshops. We met with all the different divisions, and we're still going to continue meeting with them. I'm not done with this yet. To kind of like establish, say, success factors and priorities and needs that the department would need looking at PFAS. Like, what are really the things that we have to focus on? Work is ongoing, like I said, and I kind of view it as like a change management type of thing. Again, it's a sort of a slightly newer thought process. Maybe it's going to be new. Maybe it's going to be new technology. We want to make sure everybody is on board with that. Next slide, please. The next part was the blue slide, which was addressing the high priority sites. And so for those ones that we had detections, each site's a little bit different, not just on the physical side of it, but also just the water chemistry that comes out of it. Not that it's bad, it's just different. And so we have to make sure that that doesn't change the way that, or that there's certain treatment things that have to be done maybe or a little bit differently. We have to verify if there is any difference. Then we have to go ahead and design it. And so that'll be ready for construction, again, for completion by April 2029. So that's the really big part, the rush part of this particular project. Next slide, please. The third track was the development of the long-term island-wide plan. And it kind of asked the questions, or trying to answer the questions, are there other threats? And is there a more efficient treatment technology there? I add the second part is because we're essentially rushing to make sure everything is built within this 4-year time frame. In an engineering design build standpoint, that's actually a really short period of time. So we don't want to go out with some newfangled type of technology. We want to go with what we know works, that we're comfortable with, and go for it. It may not necessarily be the most efficient yet, but we know it's going to work. So that's where we're going there. When we look at more of a long-term island-wide plan, we can kind of now expand a little bit. These other sources don't necessarily have it yet, but is there maybe a better way that we have to look at? And that includes things like how we dispose of any of the spent media and that type of thing. The other aspect of this is where are the other threats? We'd be looking at a lot of the databases you folks are aware of, whether it be from the Department of Health or the federal government and all, like where are potential areas that might have PFAS there? Could be storage areas, could be military bases, could be wherever. And compare that to where our sources are and just see, is there a better chance of this source eventually getting impacted by whatever might have been there or is there? So it's kind of looking at it from that standpoint. Next slide, please. That particular thing, when we look island-wide, does get complicated. And as you folks know, we have a widespread water system, many different sources all over the island. We also got to consider if certain wells go down, does that now eliminate water service for this area, or do we have enough sources all over? So all of these go into this long-term mitigation plan. That's what the plan is for. That's what we have to look at it. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to take a moment to describe the different treatments or the treatment evaluation process. It's probably stuff you've heard of. I'm sure this is not the first PFAS presentation you've heard, but let me just go ahead and continue on. So next slide, please. So the literature says that there's probably 3 primary ways to go ahead and get rid of PFAS. We know there's GAC, granular activated carbon, ion exchange also works. And the third one, which is not shown here, is reverse osmosis. I'm speaking more in terms of the high priority sites. And so we're looking at these first 2. Again, referring back to, we want to make sure this is something we're comfortable with, we can go ahead and do. So we started looking at that because we know reverse osmosis right off the bat is going to be a lot more energy intensive. And it's equipment that we don't actually have in our potable system right now. The other 2 will just be vessels that has some kind of media in it. We got that right now with JC, so we're a little bit more familiar with it. So we said, let's focus on this first. Next slide, please. So we set out to reconfirm what the literature says, just verifying that, all right, we know GAC works, we know ion exchange works. Does it work here for Hawaii? And again, I come back to why we have to check this out, because of the unique water quality that we have. And again, it's not necessarily bad, but it's just different. And we've heard of hard water, soft water in the mainland, all that kind of the same deal. We want to see if there's any particular difference when we use it for Hawaii water. So we actually have collected water from some of our sites, taken out to mainland labs, brought in those labs, to go ahead and do bench scale testing, just to go see against science. Does it actually work? Does it actually capture the PFAS, I guess, if you want to call it that way? And how long does it take? Now, there are certain questions, of course, that we're answering. So the next slide will kind of show you what kind of questions would be answered, whether we're doing the bench scale, and then also when we do a pilot scale. And a pilot scale is when we actually have larger columns taken out to the actual site, hook it up to our actual wells. And the thing that it does for there is it gives us an idea of the variable flow rates. Does that make a difference in how it runs? Whereas the bench scale, you can really control everything a lot better. Now out there in the field, things are just a little different. So we just want to verify, back up things. And you can see some of the questions that I'll go ahead and answer. Next slide, please. So the conclusions and next steps, this is where we are right now. For as far as the next slide, conclusions, the bench scale testing confirmed that bituminous GAC or ion exchange will both work well for PFAS removal. Definitely site-specific constraints must be considered in selecting the treatment and design. And our sites are, as you guys probably know, are all over the place. Some are in neighborhoods, some are in slightly more open areas, but we don't necessarily have a lot of space. And again, as I mentioned, the pilot scale testing will improve information for our O&M type of uses, like exactly how long it's going to use, or what kind of issues that we might have, and it help us confirm the design. So we can design a lot of it already, but now we just want to confirm a few things there. And next slide, please. And so the next steps, the pilot testing actually will start, we're aiming actually for April. This slide was made slightly before we knew that for sure. And so in a couple months, what is this? Yeah, a couple months more. We're going to continue providing, do the designs for this high priority sites and ultimately provide construction support. Federal funding assistance. So one of the big parts of this project too is to look for other ways that we can find money to go ahead and pay for a lot of these improvements here so that we don't impact our ratepayers as much as it would be if we had to pay for the whole thing. As has already been talked about in this meeting, there's a lot of change going on in the federal government, so we're not quite sure. So we're watching that carefully. But that's something we're trying to do. Then you can see the rest. The strategic framework, we want to work within the department to go ahead and make sure that everyone's aligned. That continues on. And then the long-term island-wide management plan. And so you can see the different things that we're working on there. So multi-track, a lot of things going in parallel. And that's where we're all. And ultimately, this is all, again, in an effort to make sure that we continue to provide safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. So then, if you have any questions, thank you for your time.
Yes. Thank you very much. That was very informative. Open up to the floor. You guys have questions? Go for it. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Mai. I'm representing Native Hawaiian State and an impacted family member.
Nice.
Probably know the answer to this, but I just want to get it on the record for all of our people watching. Board of Water Supply, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for that presentation. You had a slide up there that had the question, where does PFAS come from? In your professional opinion, where do you think it came from?
I'll be honest, I just, other than knowing that it can come potentially from a lot of places, beyond that, I really wouldn't. I know there's not one place, I can tell you that much. As Joyce had mentioned within hers and everybody else has heard, it could be whether non-stick pans, it could come from firefighting foam, it could come from all the different places that you had heard of. So from my perspective for this project, it could come from anywhere. My concern at this point is if it shows up in our water, we gotta make sure we get rid of it. Yeah.
So thank you for the presentation. That was really good. So where are the high priority sites? Like, for example?
They're actually scattered all over the place. They're I guess generally I would say we had in the Waimalo Aquifer area. So I guess we're talking like the Kunia area. We've had some there. We've had Waipahu area, generally area. So yeah, it's more along that side in that overall region there.
Okay, I just want to say that as a mother, I feel really relieved that you guys are actually addressing this, that you have a plan and you're going forward and that it's working. I mean, from the test, what it shows. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I have a few questions. So, okay, well, first let's start with like the ways in which you are testing the effectiveness of these different filters. Is filter the right word for the overarching?
It could, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
all right. So
filter
we're looking at GACs or ion exchange.
That's what we're currently looking at. That's correct. Yes.
And is there can you articulate it like the pros and cons relatively quickly, simply high level pros and cons between the two? Is there one that we should we be pulling from one or the other?
One of the slides actually did show it, and I can actually let me flip back to it, so I'm not really guessing. But yeah, they have slight advantages over each other for different reasons.
Okay.
From a pure chemical standpoint, for instance, the GAC, it's lower cost. It can go ahead and remove. And the thing about this is neither one of them removes every single PFAS, right? But the ones that we're really concerned with, this GAC will go ahead and do that. And in addition, we already use that to go ahead and remove a lot of the other contaminants that we're worried about. Okay. If I go at a direct comparison, the ion exchange is not known to remove a lot of that other stuff that we currently have. So if we were to use that, we now have two different trains to that. Ion exchange is better for some of the short change PFAS. So that's the sort of that trade-off there we're trying to see.
And do we know what kind of PFAS if we have more long or short chain PFAS?
We have I forgot which one it was. Like I said, I'm not the PFAS expert on that one. But I have to get back to you on that one, which one it is. The other aspect that we look at from an operational standpoint, though, is we don't currently use ion exchange. So that's something our people have to learn.
I see. So the idea is that since we already have the GAC, it might be easier to just lean in behind that. Okay.
The other part is the disposal of this media too is more difficult. Like GAC in itself is already difficult for us. Ion exchange is another level of disposal because we don't currently have that on the islands to how to go ahead and dispose.
What is it? Like activated carbon, I can understand, but I don't know what ion exchange is.
I wish I had the description of it from it's well, man-made, I guess, is one of the first parts, whereas it's carbon versus having these little granules of material. Is probably the best way I can go ahead and put it. And it's a chemical exchange.
I don't know if
that grabs whatever it is, the PFAS side, but it also then goes and puts something back in the water, which we got to go and take care of. Whereas the GAC, it's works by adsorption, where the PFAS sticks to the
Okay.
carbon. So there's a different mechanism of how it works also.
Okay. And how are you, if you know, how are you measuring the effectiveness? Like I am concerned just because my own Brita filter use, you know, at a certain point in time when I forget to change the filter and then, you know, it takes a little while for me to be like, this doesn't taste so good. So I guess I want to hear from you the mechanisms that you'll be using to, you know, just make sure that we are, you know, the GAC's actually working, it's catching the PFAS like it should, that sort of thing.
Okay. If you're talking from a test perspective, like on the bench test, the idea is that they put in a known amount of PFAS on the top of the tube, let it run through. They kind of keep track of how much water went through it, and they're measuring what comes out in the bottom and how much, and they measure the time that it takes. So they go ahead and graph that out. So they know what the breakthrough time is of any of those particular ones and compare that. I'll speak in generalities because, like I said, I'm not the expert. And then they can kind of scale it up to say, all right, if we put it in real life, this is about how long we would expect before we have to change out the material, whichever one we may go ahead and choose. In actual operation, we would go ahead and measure it. We would call it a bed. We wouldn't wait till it gets to the bottom. We would actually measure it in between so that we
Okay.
know that it got this far. Okay, it got this far. We better start go ahead and change it out before it gets to the bottom and
I
stuff
see.
comes out.
Okay.
So that's kind of operation how we would do it.
Okay, cool.
So is this for groundwater or is this drinking water? That your test, sorry, it's probably in your presentation, but just for clarification,
We have only groundwater, so we're looking in terms of treating our groundwater,
treating the groundwater.
treating
Okay.
groundwater to ultimately become our drinking water. Yes.
Okay.
Let's go a little deeper there though. So your goal is to make sure that the drinking water that we receive at the tap doesn't have PFAS in it, right? But are you also making sure that the water that comes out of the aquifer into a stream, for example, doesn't have PFAS in it?
That's not part of this particular project, no.
Yeah, I think that's a tall order. So thank you
So
for
we have-
making the drinking
we
water
have
clean.
PFAS in our groundwater. Is that what you said?
I would just say that we found it in the water when we sampled it at the wells.
At the wells.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And so, you know, one of the sort of like if reading between the lines of your presentation that gave me pause is like, are we basically accepting that PFAS is going to spread throughout the water supply?
I would say that we're just being proactive just in case it does. I mean,
Okay.
it's so prevalent already in our products that we have, and we'll plan for the assumption that it will show up and want to make sure that we're ahead of the game if it does.
Okay. All right. Has the military shared with you how much PFAS they think has been released at Red Hill? I'm concerned about the AFFF concentrate that was released. You know, I think there are 2, right? Or 3 releases. I think it was at least 2. Anyway, do you have an idea of like how much PFAS is lurking in the beta zone right now?
I don't. I'm not sure if
No.
Joy said them.
Okay. Have you guys, I mean, have you asked for that information? Okay. All right. So for the DoD folks who are watching, and we know they're watching, could you please share with us how, like, even just an estimate of how much PFAS we're actually dealing with? We have an idea of how much of the AFFF concentrate was released, but I don't know if that actually translates to how much PFAS we're dealing with, just because I feel like, you know, in terms of setting up the future for success, right? Because we're not going to know about it until it gets down into the water, right? Percolates through. It might be a lot of GACs we're talking about if that's the technology that we're using, right? Depending on how much PFAS we have to deal with. So anyway, that's one of the many asks. Thanks. Other questions? Yes, Melody, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Joyce, for being here today. All right, so I've reviewed what's called the PFAS levels at Red Hill, which is the highest worldwide. That's an article written by Pat Elder on December 19, 2024. And it's saying that the spill that we're referring to on November 29, 2022 was 1,300 gallons of AFFF with PFAS. But like Marty said, we don't know what the concentration of PFAS specifically was in that AFFF. So it's quite substantial. Well, he goes on to say that with Red Hill, regarding PFAS, it ends up being highest worldwide at 191 0.5 billion parts per trillion. And as you had mentioned in your slide, the EPA MCLs for PFAS is 4 to 10 parts per trillion. But we're looking at, 191.5 billion parts per trillion. That's quite substantial. Then it goes on to say about PFAS compounds like PFP little ea, there's 100 billion parts per trillion. And that is not, it's not regulated by the EPA. And he also goes on to say that PFBA is 50 billion parts per trillion. And again, that's not specifically regulated by the EPA. So it is quite substantial. Do you believe that your treatment with the GAC and the ion would be able to handle something like that of that magnitude?
We're not looking at that level in our particular project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned also Waimalu, Kunia, and Waipahu are the,
Generally in those areas, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head which wells it was. I know they're generally in that area. Yeah.
okay, because Waimalu is close enough to Red Hill, I would imagine. Kunia and Waipahu is further away. And we know that Schofield Wastewater Treatment Facility, operated by Aqua engineers, they reclaim the water as well as the sludge or biosolids, and that is then sold for agricultural purposes. So it's not being tested for PFAS. So that could very well be a source of the PFAS that your company is seeing out in Kunia and Wahiwa. So or Waipahu. Yeah, just mentioning because those are high agricultural communities. And to my understanding, the reclaimed water and the biosolids for fertilizer is sold, I don't know, under market. So it's attractive to the farmers and in that region. So I would suggest that perhaps you should check to see where the source may be going into the groundwater. It could very well be the use of reclaimed water and biosolids, because of Schofield wastewater treatment facility takes in the sludge and the wastewater from 5 military installations. And unlike civilian household, I would imagine that their wastewater is quite more filled with toxic contaminants in it than a normal household. So that's just an opinion that I wanted to say, that it's kind of scary that we are the highest worldwide of concentration of PFAS. And then you've mentioned about your long-term, ion filtering. I guess that's something new for us.
ion
We've never,
exchange.
yes, we've
Mhm,
never
mhm.
heard of that before. And for you to say that the GAC filter is sufficient, I think I've heard that it's really reverse osmosis that would be the most efficient for PFAS. Have you folks looked into that?
That is part
as
of
well?
the evaluation. That is correct. Looking at that, as well as if there's any other emerging technologies for treatment. Yeah, reverse osmosis is on the table. For the high priority ones, we wanted to go and look at the ones that we can get out there quickly, though. But yeah, and thank you for your input, by the way, as far as the potential sources. I really appreciate
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Joyce.
We have some additional questions online. So let's see, we'll start with Jamie, sorry. Jamie, you can go first.
Hi, aloha. I was just wondering, when did the Board of Water Supply start testing? I have a two-part question, depending on the answer, for the PFAS.
Sorry, I'm trying to think through what dates I saw on the reports or the spreadsheets. I remember seeing 2023, maybe 2021 might have been some of the earliest ones. Yeah.
So it was with the Red Hill spill with the fuel being, is it spurred due to the spill with it being in the AFFF line? And I'm asking because I was wondering if you guys have seen a spike since the last AFFF spill.
I'm not sure what triggered our chem lab to go ahead and do that. And also even the other question about if there's a spike. I can take the question down and we can try to find out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If I may just jump in, I believe when the AFFF spill happened in 2022, that did trigger us to do more monitoring and testing at our source wells near Red Hill. I don't know if that contributed to more detections, but since then we have been detecting PFAS all across the various wells, some as far east as Ainakoa, and some as far as out west in Makakilo.
Okay, I don't want to quote this wrong. I'd have to go back over some of the documents that I have from previous years with the military. There being possible PFAS or PFOS in the groundwater. Was the Board of, if that is accurate, was the Board of Water Supply ever notified of that?
Sorry, I'm not too sure.
Okay, I'll see if I can pull up some of the documents and send them into Ernie and you guys, if I'm accurate on that. I'm trying, as I was listening to the presentation, I was trying to recall. That's why I asked the question of when the Board of Water Supply starts testing.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. We have a question here from Anne. Yeah.
You mentioned that the state of Hawaii would be looking for federal assistance for these things. What is the amount that you'd be looking for from the feds?
Actually, Board of Water Supply will be looking for money from the feds and quite frankly, pretty much whatever we can get to go ahead and support the
But is
design
there an
construction.
estimate or a plan to ask for like $10
Um,
billion or?
No, I don't think it's one big number like that. We're looking at it per what each of the sites that we're going to be working on to support this particular project. Yeah, I don't have a lump sum number for you right now because we're still working on the design and construction estimates for those sites.
I see. And another question, does the landfill have a lot to do with how much PFAS goes into the, down through the ground and into our water supply? I mean, if you think about all the plastics and all the stuff that are in each one of the landfills, that must somehow put a lot of stuff down in our groundwater.
I don't know that necessarily from a professional sense and within this project. I know that's something that we'll be looking at from the long-term island-wide mitigation plan. A concern for sure, yes, for exactly the reasons you said. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I also wanted to highlight that we have Emily online. If she works mostly on streams, and there are implications for our stream ecosystems from PFAS in the groundwater. And then also I see that Kathleen Pahanui from Board of Water Supply has her hand up. So I don't know, Kathleen, if you want to, I'm assuming it's relevant to what's being said here. If you want to jump in, and then Emily, we can hand it over to you if you have anything to add and or if we have any questions. Go ahead.
Hey guys, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to go. We have a lot of good information on PFAS on our website. If you go to our homepage under Red Hill, I'm trying to find when we found the Ainakoa, but that was quite a while. We've actually been testing for PFAS before, I believe, the 2021 spill. We only had one hit in Ainakoa, and I believe that was, I want to say 2019. It was a while ago, and we never ever had another hit there again. But we keep all of all of our testing for PFAS is on our websites. In the most recent reports, we are getting hits of PFAS in Halava and Halava Shaft, Halava Wells and Halava Shaft, but the levels are not changing, and they are well below the EPA numbers. So I just they're just not changing, but they're there. The other thing I wanted to comment on the different kinds of remediation that Mark is looking at, they all come with pros and cons. You know, as Mark mentioned, we're very familiar with the GAC because of the filtering that we do in central Oahu because of agrochemicals that were discovered back in the late 80s and 90s. So we do have a lot of familiarity there. The other stuff, again, everything has pros and cons. And Mark, don't we do some reverse osmosis out at our recycling plant?
That's correct. Yeah, reverse osmosis
Yeah, so we do
only at
have
the
some
recycling water plant.
familiarity
Correct.
with reverse osmosis out in Honouliuli. So we do understand the process and we do use it for our one water that we use out in the west side over there. So, but I would encourage everyone to go to our website and look at, again, we post all of our tests. We just got a new whole slew of tests that we just posted to our website. So that would be a good place to start just to see what's coming in and what we can. We haven't had any new detections, I don't believe, since 2023. And they have been, as Melody pointed out, Waipahu and Kunia, and kind of in that little bit of an area, in the more central area. The other thing, Melody, we do know that up at Schofield, you know, Wheeler Air Force Base is up there. And so we know they probably used a ton of AFFF foam of varying types over the years. So the PFAS, I mean, we have no proof, obviously, but our gut kind of tells us that that might have contributed to some of the hits that we've gotten in Kunia for the various hits. Just so you know, we understand too that the plant that the Army has at Schofield that takes in all of the waste, that all ends up in Lake Wilson as R1 water is our understanding. So a lot of things to investigate, and you're right, we constantly ask the military for information. And the more voices we can get asking for information is going to be really, really important. So thank you, Marty, for mentioning that. As you said, DOD is probably listening. So thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. Mahalo.
Yeah, and just provide an example of talking about master classes and gaslighting. The Board of Water Supply is a master class in transparency. Like their website is epic. Thank you, Kathleen. You've done a really good job of helping, keep the public up to speed. And it's been, it's like a regular deluge of 1,000-page reports and 10-page letters and things like that. So I really appreciate Board of Water Supply in providing that public service for all of us. So thank you very much. Okay, any other questions around this part? I'd like to pull in Emily if she's available. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
see her
here.
name on the.
Oh,
Oh, there,
can
I
you
see her
hear
now.
me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, hi.
Hi,
everyone.
thanks so
And
much for joining us the last minute. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for having me. And apologies if you hear my 2-year-old scream in the background. So not home.
It's the reason why we're doing this. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just a couple things that I wanted to add on. Thanks to the presentations from Board of Water Supply. I think I've met both people there through different conferences, or at least I saw both of your talks at the Pacific Water Conference. So nice to see you from afar. So I'm an environmental engineer and I'm faculty at the Water Resources Research Center at UH Manoa. I started last June and I got brought in sort of as a result of Red Hill. The center as a whole realized that there was a missing piece in terms of having an environmental chemist on staff when everything happened, not knowing what samples to collect, how to use the analytical equipment we have, that kind of thing. So I have a lot of expertise in water quality surrounding environmental chemistry and chemical contaminants in water systems. So just a couple of things that I wanted to point out. Just to briefly answer the question about what ion exchange is, it's a really similar concept sort of to granule activated carbon. So with granule activated carbon, the GAC, the compounds sorb to the media. And with ion exchange, and instead of being more neutral material like GAC, these are engineered materials that are often engineered to be specific to attract certain ions. And so a lot of PFAS are charged. And so they have the opposite charge and then exchange. So ion exchange, they exchange out a harmless ion like potassium. And so it removes the constituent that it's trying to remove and then replaces it with something less harmful. So that's what that is. And then reverse osmosis, it's even more specific, and it's a really, really tightly wound membrane, and really only water passes through that. It gets rid of ions like sodium and chloride. So that's why we use it for things like desalination even, because it can get rid of even the smallest little salts. So there's just a range of different treatment options. And I also do want to say there have been a lot of studies on even just simple Brita filters in homes being used for different PFAS, and they are extremely effective. And as long as you keep up to date with changing your filter out, they work really, really well. So it can be peace of mind for different people depending on what their comfort level is like. And then
Thank
the
you.
other, yeah, of course. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is that DOH also has a really comprehensive list of information on their website related to PFAS. You can just search HDOH PFAS, and there's a whole page, and they summarize not only certain sampling events that Board of Water Supply has done, but maybe if the Navy sampled or other places sampled. And there's a lot of compiled information there for when positive detections have occurred. And so that might be another place to look for more information, or maybe different events that we're curious about. And they also have information for what drinking water is tested and how. And so there's something that the EPA does called, there's this unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. And so the EPA mandates states and public water systems to sample and look for certain constituents. And they do this every few years. And there was one in 2013 to 2015, and then one again happening now, 2023 to 2025, both focused on PFAS. And so you can see the public results. Well, hopefully we can still see them now. That's a question. Everybody I know has been downloading all the public water data from the federal websites, but that has a lot of those, but those are specifically for systems, public drinking water systems that serve over, I think, around 3,000 people. And so it doesn't always capture like private wells that people might be interested in learning about, or other systems that we know might be impacted. But it's a really good resource, and also talks about other things that we've touched on, like what's been detected in wastewater, biosolids, landfill. Roger Brewer at HDOH just finished a study in November of 2024, and they looked at a wide range of compounds of PFAS in those three media, so in wastewater, biosolids, and landfill, to get an idea and assess overall risk from these different pools that could introduce PFAS eventually into the water, drinking water system. So those are just some notes that I wanted to make and be made aware of.
Thanks. I have some questions just around the health of our streams in the context of PFAS. I am worried, right? We're not there's no way to put a GAC filter on every seep and weep and spring and all the things where the water bubbles up out of the ground. So PFAS is going to get into the streams. Has anybody thought about how we're going to address that? Because is it right to assume that once it gets into the stream, then it will eventually bioaccumulate into all of the critters that we then eat and enjoy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. It's a really great question. So I think, part of the next phase, or at least as the EPA was prior to this administration, the next phase was to be more stringent in regulating environmental discharges of PFAS. So, for example, regulating what's coming out of a wastewater treatment facility. So we're talking about the wastewater treatment facilities that are in the middle of Oahu and that don't discharge into the ocean. So like Schofield and that discharge into Lake Wilson, for example, those could get into other surface waters and then get into streams and things like that, especially. So there has been a push to regulate those discharges as well. But it's just it's coming. It's taking time, just like the drinking water regulations took time. And there has been some work looking specifically, Aurora Kagawa Viviani, another faculty at the Water Resources Research Center, she's been working on this even more than I have, and sampling different streams and also some springs. And there are some detections in terms of, I think everything below any sort of regulatory limit that we'd be worried about, but that, like you said, doesn't mean we're not worried about it accumulating in different organisms. And I think there's someone at SOS, so in oceanography at UH, who's also done some work in detecting concentrations in fish. And I think part of the issue there is it's a lot of work to do that. And so understanding the ecosystem impacts is really challenging from a scientific perspective. You have to blend fish up and extract the PFAS, and it's not something that is as easily done or labs can handle compared to water samples. So I think there's some limitations there, but I do know there are researchers looking at that. I'm trying to remember the researcher that I'm thinking of that has done work, but I can't remember her name, so I can follow up and give that information.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So as the CRI for Red Hill, we are focused on the PFAS that has been released into the Vados zone around the Red Hill tanks. And we know that it's, thanks to Melody, we know it is a uku-billion amount of PFAS, some unknowable large amount. And it's already in the environment. So like are the scientists who are concerned about streams thinking about what we do and however many years it takes to percolate all the way down and start dripping into our primary aquifer? What do we do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think there are researchers as in another research organization that's under the umbrella of UHHIG at Don Thomas is the professor working on this, on understanding how the groundwater flow is happening below everything below the surface. I'm not a hydrogeologist, so I don't want to say something incorrectly even about what he's doing. But my understanding is they're trying to help and aid in understanding that flow path to understand where things are going and how long, using different tracers to study that. And so I think there is ongoing research to do that work. There's a big Office of Naval Research project that I know John Thomas is a part of, and I think it's specific to those efforts. And from what I understand, they have, Navy permission to go and sample and look at these systems. One limitation for a lot of people is just getting access to even being able to understand this, right? There isn't an easy way to go in there unless there's a direct collaboration.
All right, so there's a lot of need in that area then to do a lot around monitoring our streams. Okay, thank you. Sorry,
Kathleen just said that the tracer study may be on the next FTAC agenda, which is, that's probably the case. So,
right on, cool. Sorry, I've been hogging the mic. Does anybody else have questions? Yes, Melody, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Emily, with the studies that you are aware of, should there be a warning at all regarding the consumption of fish with the bioaccumulation nature of PFAS? Should the public be at least warned that that might be an issue?
That's a really great and important question, and I don't have an answer. I think that it requires more research to be able to answer that. But I do think people are working on it, and it's on a lot of at least researchers at UH's minds to figure out. And I think that it's very much necessary, but I don't have an answer for if immediately there needs to be a notification. As far as I'm aware, no, but that doesn't mean, that might just mean because we don't have the information, not because the answer is no.
Do you know if any testing's been done at Lake Wilson, given that it is a direct depository of wastewater?
That's a really great questions. Great question. I don't think anything, I haven't seen any publicly available data from water samples collected at Lake Wilson. But Dr. Aurora Kagawa Viviani and Dr. Juhi Kim, who's in civil and environmental engineering, and we actually just wrote a proposal to try to do more sampling of different surface waters, including there, to get a better idea of general contaminants of emerging concern, including PFAS in those areas. So hopefully we get money to do that, but it's on our minds.
You mentioned Dr. Juhi Kim. Who is the other doctor?
Kagawa Viviani.
We know.
Kagaw.
Okay, we know Aurora.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you
Yeah,
very much.
Aurora. Yeah.
She's a superhero. Yes.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so basically we need to do a bake sale so that they can fund the research that needs to be done to save us from the PFAS in the streams. Excellent. Okay, we do need to move on. I'm noting people are telling me what time it is. So other questions on this before we move on?
Well, I just kind of wanted to share because I don't know if what people are watching, if they know what PFAS is, but it's a like a long chain of carbons that doesn't break down, and it's found in like non-stick, kind of materials, or like waterproofing materials, and AFFF, which is like firefighting foam. And so it is an issue. It accumulates. It never breaks down. So it never like there's no way because of the long chain of carbons. And so it causes, when it accumulates to a certain level, it can cause major illnesses. And if any of you want more information on PFAS, watch the movie Dark Waters. It's a really good movie. It's 2 hours. You can watch it on YouTube. It will explain what PFAS is and how dangerous this is. And because we live on an island and everything's connected and it's an ecosystem, we need to start monitoring. And thank you, Board of Water Supply, for like even planning to filter PFAS. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, this is all about the long game at this point, right? We're going to try to figure out how to set the future up for success. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Emily, for joining us. Thank you, Kathleen. So I think Anne, go ahead. Sorry.
One quick question. Emily, you
it's a quick
mentioned that there are a couple of commercial filters. Do you have the names of the ones that are the ones you recommend most that can take out PFAS?
I think, there are a lot of brand names now. So anything that is advertised as activated carbon, so Brita and Pure, all those types, but there are lots of, spin-offs, knockoffs, that would work just as well.
That's good.
Yeah. So the ones that you can get access to very easily. And there are in-home and below the sink reverse osmosis systems that you can buy. They're often more expensive. So, a Brita filter or Pure filter will run you like $10 to $20, including the containment, the jug that comes with it. But a reverse osmosis below the sink filter, that's more like $200 probably. But it can remove them as well. So there's a range of what you can buy.
Thank you.
So if you do buy a filter, keep the receipts because we're going to ask the Navy to reimburse all of us for all of these unnecessary expenses that we have to now incur. Yes, Ilima? Oh.
Kathleen, how much it can be filtered out if it can get down to EPA levels?
Yeah, because my understanding, and Emily, you would know more about this than I do, but my understanding is that at least on the market, and we always recommend that people go to the National Sanitation Organization, you know which one I'm talking about, the National Sanitation Organization, and they actually certify products. And I'm not sure yet that it goes down to the EPA levels of 0.4 parts per billion or something. Maybe they do now, and that would be great if they did, but I don't know if that's possible now or not. So that would be my only question. But we always send people to that website to just double check.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what the starting concentration is.
Yeah.
And so if it's low to start, then it will be lower. And so it's a function of the incoming concentration. But I do think some do get below. Let's see.
If you have any,
I
that would be great.
Yeah,
If you
I
could share
can
that
follow
with
up.
them.
Yeah, the NSF International is what you're
NSF,
talking about,
that's
that
it.
certifies. Yeah, they certify products, so you can go and see them. You can go to their website and see. I think a lot of the information is probably for the previous health advisory of overall
Mhm.
70 parts per trillion.
Right.
But if the concentration is low to start, then it will lower it even more. And it's better to have. It's a protection to have. It doesn't do anything to make your water poor quality. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Appreciate that.
Okay, if that's it, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Before we go, I also wanted to make sure that we gave people another resource. One website that I have used on this question of PFAS chemicals, there's the Environmental Working Group. They have an extensive resource online. It's EWG, just the three letters, EWG.org. And it's covers all kinds of things. This is not specific to Red Hill. This is PFAS. It's a national organization. So anyway, it's one of the many other resources that we've offered that people can use to figure out what filters work, what products in their homes might have PFAS, that sort of thing. Okay, we can move on to the next agenda item. We're going to try to run through some of the things that we have seen the DoD say recently. So, the Department of Defense is not comfortable coming here. And so they have been putting a lot of effort over the last month or so to do different kinds of what they're, public relations campaigns, basically. So we've seen webinars and podcasts and town halls and things of that nature. Unfortunately, none of these provide this style of back and forth conversation where I hope we have demonstrated that people learn a lot in the course of asking questions and getting answers. But that said, I still think that there's value in us understanding what's going on, what they are saying is going on out there. And so there's a couple of things we wanted to run through. I don't know, do you want to start with this, Helene? Okay.
Yeah, sure. So if you go to the Navy, sorry, let me just open that up. So the Navy Closure Task Force website, they have podcasts on there, and they have a schedule of community events that they'll be attending. But if you watch the podcast, you'll get some information, very basic information about how they're power washing the tanks, the removal of the sludge, and a little bit of an update of when, kind of the timeline, but not much more than that. So, there's a lot of, it's about 6 minutes for each podcast. It's, I will encourage people to go and watch it just so that you can keep yourself informed. But then questions come up like, where are they putting the sludge, right? Where are they going to, they say, according to the podcast, they're sending it off, right, to somewhere else to store. After they power wash, what's happening to the water? They power wash the tanks, after the removal of the sludge. How much repairs are being done? Because it's taking 3 months to repair some of the tanks. So these are some of the questions that come up when you're watching these things. And it's part of the reason why it's really important to have that engagement with the U.S. military. And I want to just announce too that they are now attending neighborhood board meetings, which was one of our suggestions to them.
That's how we know they're listening.
Yeah. So the next one, they're they will be at the IEA neighborhood board meeting on March 11th. So if you want, if you want to be able to engage with them, they'll be there. On March 13th, they'll be at the Wahiwa NIA Community Association meetings. And then on March 25th, and this is on their schedule, they'll be at the Pro City Neighborhood Board meeting. So, these are opportunities for the community to ask the questions that need to be asked. But yeah, I would really suggest people go and check out their site. It's very one-way information. You don't get to interact. That's all.
Yeah, go ahead. Susie?
I'd like to add to Kaylani's upcoming events that there will be a Navy Town Hall, March 12th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Kihi Lagoon Memorial. And they'll have, of course, they'll have people around with their posters. And that's a good place to bring your questions. Thank you.
And I'll add to that on April 9th will be the state's fuel, FTAC, what is it? Fuel Tank Advisory Committee, something along those lines. This is the one that was set up by our local state senate. So that'll be April 9th. I do want to sort of like just run down, tick off some of the status of where things are that I know of. Okay, so we know that Tank 7 has been pressure washed. I was going to say cleaned, but I don't trust that it's clean. It's been pressure washed. So we'll need to get an update on that. Tank 8 is still in the process of getting pressure washed. And I don't know why it's taking longer than Tank 7. They started at the same time. There are repairs underway on Tanks 5 and 6, and degassing is expected to start in March for Tanks 3 and 4. There is, on the website that Hailani mentioned, there is a phone number for, it's a hotline, basically to report concerns around air quality. This is something that we pushed them to set up because they're just releasing, they open up the tank, it's filled with all, like gas station, right? It's like all stink inside. So they just, they're letting all of that just sort of like go out into the air. And there are neighborhoods right around these tanks. So if you live near the tanks, please note down that phone number. And, in the next month or so, if for whatever reason you're feeling woozy for no explanation, there might be contaminants in the air that maybe you can't smell but might be affecting you. We don't actually know. So it's just an effort to try to make people kind of be aware of their surroundings. They are in the process of removing pipelines that connected the fuel tanks to the Pearl Harbor where the ships came in to get the gas. They are finding asbestos, which I don't think was on anybody's bingo card for the Red Hill disaster. Add it to the list. And then they are experimenting with the idea of filling the pipes with some kind of foam. I don't know what kind of foam, and just leaving them there. I don't like that plan. And in addition, we know that there's a lot being done around groundwater monitoring, which we are super suspicious about because it's just been so poorly done in the past, right? The Navy has come up with models for how the contamination would move through the groundwater to try to show that there was no risk to, like, it's not going to go anywhere. It's only going to go downhill and out to the ocean, which is also not okay, but they said that to make us feel better. And we have since seen that hasn't been the case. There is, I think somebody earlier made a reference to this. There is plans for a tracer dye test. So this is when they put a little bit of non-toxic color in one place and then watch it to see where it comes out on the other place to kind of prove connectivity. So we will be watching for the outcomes of that.
And I think they started that already.
Oh, it's already happening. Okay.
Yeah. So it's University of Hawaii study, but it's funded by the Office of Naval Research. It's a $10 million grant that they got. Dr. Parrott is one of the main researchers, and I did invite him to come to our next Red Hill CRI to answer questions about how they set up the study. And yeah, he had some strong opinions about what was going on. And I am interested to see the study, but I'm concerned about the fact that the Navy is funding it, and this researcher has I'm afraid has a very strong bias
Hmm.
against the Board of Water Supply. He made that very clear. He has a strong bias against anybody who comes up and says that they're sick from the water. So this is the type of researcher that is in charge of. I had a long conversation with him 2 days ago, and he he seems to be pushing the narrative that the Navy is pushing, and so that causes concern. And it, for me, it calls. I mean, then I think we should watch very carefully what comes out of this study.
Okay,
Thanks.
cool. Thank you very much. There are other events that have happened, webinars, town halls, conferences, and things like that over the last month or so, 2 months. Online, does anyone want to talk about, various numbers of us have attended them. Do you guys want to say anything about your experiences? The events that you've gone to?
I can speak to the National Health Academies Zoom that they just had. There's 2 studies going on with one is the National Health Academies and the other is the Red Hill study with the University of Hawaii, which both of those are very important steps in bringing clarity and direction regarding the clarification of exposure to the contaminated drinking water, alongside with the consequences or the potential consequences of the explosion and exposure to the vapors that have occurred due to the Red Hill fuel leaks. During the recent first public meeting with NAS on February 20th, Dr. Rice of the DHA stated that Red Hill is a national issue of interest, and as a sponsor of the project, because the DoD owned the tank farm in the Red Hill, aka Red Hill, and that the DoD and the vast majority of the DoD healthcare beneficiaries that had persistent and ongoing symptoms. It was also stated by Dr. Rice that this is a national issue due to the fact that most of those that have been affected were not just seeing military doctors, they were also seeing civilian providers for a variety of reasons, most profoundly due to the distrust that has been created over the past 3.5 years. And now those residents or those individuals that are affected are not just living nationwide, they're living across the globe. Diana Felton of the DOH also spoke of the duration of exposure and the unsafe levels of the drinking water, which is depicted in a chart that I gave you guys. I've also posted it publicly, which has now led to her changing the prevailing narrative of short-term levels of exposure to acute and subacute levels of exposure. Now that this info has been made available to the National Health Academies and the Hawaii Department of Health and the DHA, we now know that our families were not just exposed with acute levels of exposure in the drinking water, and that the prevailing narrative that has been pushed publicly for the past 3+ years, that the exposure started in November 2021 and after, is no longer accurate. As the chart of Dr. Felton's presentation in her own words, 3+ years later, acknowledging months of unsafe levels of drinking water, lasting months predating the November 2020 spill leak, as far back as the July 8th, 2021 and September 21. So there was 3 months that have just now been admitted to over the summer of 2021 with unsafe levels in the drinking water of contamination. With this information coming to the forefront, the DoD, HOA, or Hawaii Department of Health and EPA need to change their narrative of the short-term exposure to unsafe drinking water, that the symptoms, so many including their pets, are psychosomatic and a manifestation due to the stressful event, which has been the narrative that we have been hearing regurgitated for the past 3+ years. Diana Felton also confirms what the families and the pet symptoms are collaborating, because families were expressing concern of those timeframes previously. These agencies need to stop pretending that the families are straddlers and opposers as the DOD has tried to portray us as. Our families were sickened and suffered at a minimum months of unsafe levels of drinking water, of toxic drinking water, which has now been acknowledged 3 years later, dating back to at least the summer and fall of 2021, with another known massive leak in May of 2021. And of course, we all know why we're here, the 2020 spill. With this info coming to light 3+ years later, with numerous individuals and organizations advocating this entire time, how many spills and leaks have there been that we haven't known about? Our families have merely asked for this confirmation and help in order to address these issues caused at no fault of their own. How has it taken 3+ years for our families to hear the medical doctors to finally acknowledge all of this, including Dr. Felton, that she stated at the close of her presentation with the National Academies of Sciences that the symptoms and exposure are very real and not just psychosomatic. Dr. Felton also stated during her presentation that she and the Hawaii Department of Health had a direct way of getting this information out to all medical providers, which leads me to my closing ask of the Hawaii Department of Health, the Department of Defense, and the EPA. Moving forward, since Dr. Felton and the Hawaii Department of Health have a direct line to release this information to our civilian and military doctors across the globe, as well as the CDC, when will we expect clear guidance of acute and subacute relating to months-long exposure of contaminated drinking water and vapor intrusion, correcting the previous medical guidance that has been released, claiming families were only exposed for a short period? When can we expect the DOD and the Hawaii Department of Health, with the support of the DHA, with a clear-cut memorandum depicting the now acknowledged months of toxic exposure with months of subacute and acute levels of contamination drinking water? What are all of the city, state, federal agencies going to do to ensure that it does not take 3+ years for individuals and medical providers to know the extent of their exposure endured in future incidents similar to Red Hill? And also, when can we expect a memorandum to be released in order to recant the I believe it was December 6th or December 4th, 2021 memorandum? With the National Health Academies, they are doing, it is third party. The DOD is asking for this study to be done. There is also a list of community liaisons, such as myself, Meredith Wilson, Kat McCanahan, and others that will also be reporting back to the National Health Academies, and they will be holding public meetings. As you can see, it's here on the screen for you. Thank you, Rosalie, for putting that up. I implore anybody that was affected to please reach out. On the next slide, there should be a link at the end that shows you how you can stay informed and also how you can submit your testimony or ask questions. You can be anonymous. Also with the Red Hill Registry, they're doing phenomenal work and they're moving forward as well as helping the community in order to bring this information to light. I really implore everybody that's been infected to reach out in whatever capacity you can in order to share your narrative, is even regarding your pets, as Diana Felton also admitted in the National Health Academies, that the pets were the first notifying of symptoms prior to the admittance of the spill.
Thank you very much, Jamie. We'll post this on the CRI website so people can actually click on those links. Thank you. Any other events people wanted to mention? Go ahead, Lima.
I don't have an event, but I just wanted to mention that the state recently settled a lawsuit for one of the individuals who claimed that they had a heart attack because of their emotional distress that they suffered as a result of the false missile alert. So nobody actually was injured in that situation, but they were still injured. So, yeah. So there clearly have been examples where the state understands that people could be traumatized even without being physically injured. Right.
Thank you. Okay, so there's two other things I wanted to make sure. Oh, sorry, Peggy, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up with Jamie. I also watched the NAS webinar, and several things stood out to me. And I did follow up with a rebuttal, a full page that went out to the full committee, and I did get a response to thank me for my input. But the Dr. Rice kept talking about the Red Hill Clinic like it was some great, wonderful thing. And out of the 93,000 people affected, possibly, I know we don't know that, where that number comes from. He said only 251 people have gone to the Red Hill Clinic. And that was so surprising to me. I've been to the Red Hill Clinic. I pointed out to this committee that was pretty much a shit show. I didn't use those words, but it was open 1 day a week for 4 hours. And he kept saying it was open to civilians. Well, how are civilians supposed to get on the base? I live in a community, we're retired military, so we could go. I live in a community with over 5,000 people. There was no information about Red Hill Clinic. No one was encouraged to go to Red Hill Clinic. Very few people knew about it. So I did point that out to them, and they said they appreciated that information. And I just want to make that comment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other things to add on? All right, there are two other things I wanted to mention. Just to make sure that everybody knows about. So one, you guys may have, probably heard in the news about how the Trump administration is releasing people from their service. And so the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was recently fired. And I just think it's an important note for everyone here that Admiral Paparo was on the short list to fill that seat. And it was just highly concerning that he was even remotely being considered, because he was the one who was in charge of all naval operations in Hawaii, in the Pacific, when the Red Hill crisis first occurred. And he was part of the mastermind behind this gaslighting that we've been experiencing. He said a lot at his most recent confirmation hearing when he got promoted under the Biden administration, talking about how he's going to rebuild trust with the public. And, as we can see here, the lack of the DOD's presence, how that's going. So that's just an important thing to note, and I think it is notable to me. It's notable that it took only a few. Well, I don't want to say a few. I don't want to diminish it, but several Red Hill families, Red Hill families living all around the world who were affected, heard about the Paparo being considered for this position and advocated for him to not be considered. And as far as we know, he's no longer being considered for that position. That just goes to show, though, that it doesn't really matter in terms of like administrations and things like that. Like those people that like from my perspective, I feel like Paparo holds a lot of responsibility for how this situation was handled, and hasn't really been held accountable. And he's still like on the short list for different jobs, and so something for us to be vigilant about. In addition, I want to make sure that everyone knows that the Navy has been talking about trying to reopen their Halava Aiea shaft as a water security for them, right? Because they currently only have one source of drinking water. And so it's my understanding that that decision was recently approved, or that request was recently approved by the Department of Health. So, yeah, that's really concerning. It means that people who are living on the Navy water lines will be eventually receiving water from the Aiea Halava shaft, which is contaminated with whatever came out of the Red Hill fuel leaks and AFFF releases. They are piloting a larger GAC filtration system. So similar to the filtration system that Mark was describing earlier, they're going to be using something along those lines with the intent of trying to clean the water. I was surprised that didn't make the news. I feel like that's the kind of thing people will want to know about. So I'm sharing that information information here, and we will share more information as it becomes available to us. Yes, Elima.
I think the broader public doesn't know about this either. And I think it's something that we definitely want to talk more about with everyone, because I think everybody will be impacted by this. We need to be able to stop them from doing this, because I'm concerned about what might happen to the other aquifers as a result of them reopening theirs. So.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yep. And it's notable to me because, for all of the effort that the Department of Defense has been putting into, public relations, they didn't mention this part of it. They also have not talked at all about the Office of Inspector General reports that were released in November, December timeframe that were, very critical of their handling of the Red Hill crisis. And we've heard peep about that. So those are the last announcements that I have. We are behind time, and we do want to get through legislative announcements. So if there's any other comments on this one, if not, we can move on. Anybody online? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, take it away, Melody. Tell us about the bills.
Oh, thank you. All right, there's 4 bills that passed the first chamber and be going over to the House. Well, actually, or vice versa. And that's House Bill 505, House Draft 1, relating to the VI Policy Coordinator. So this bill establishes a VI Policy Coordinator for Red Hill VI initiatives, and it also creates the Red Hill Remediation Special Fund. Okay, next bill, SB 438, SD1, and this one is relating to hazardous and solid waste. And this one prohibits the construction, modification, or expansion of waste facilities near or above significant aquifers. It prohibits waste facilities on Class A and B agricultural land, and it prohibits the use of fly ash and bottom ash from municipal waste combustors for road building or landfill cover. And it requires disposal of fly ash and bottom ash in double line and licensed landfills. Okay, next bill, Senate Bill 446, SD1, and this one again is related to landfills. Both of the landfill bills were introduced by Senator Dela Cruz, and this one prohibits landfills on no-pass zones where groundwater contamination is at risk, and it requires counties to identify no-pass zones and solid waste management plans. And again, it prohibits the use of fly ash and bottom ash from municipal waste combustors for road building or landfill cover. Sure.
Why are we concerned about landfill bills when we're talking about Red Hill?
Oh, well, it's actually because we want to protect the aquifer.
Right.
So that's
The
it.
risk of building a landfill over our aquifer is just, it's Red Hill 2.0, and we don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like Red Hill number 2.
Yeah.
If
Thank
this should happen. And as mentioned, Donovan Dela Cruz, it's in his district where they are planning to put it in Wahiawa. So he introduced these 2 bills.
Thank you.
Okay, next bill, Senate Bill 639, SD1, relating to underground storage tanks. And this one was introduced by Senator Keoho Kalole, and it clarifies environmental restoration requirements for underground storage tanks in the event of jet fuel release. And it requires cleanup and removal of jet fuel and related compounds as soon as practicable. And it establishes a rebuttable presumption that detection of contaminants near the tank is a result of the release. So that's it, that's going over, that's crossing over. And then I have a bunch of PFAS bills. I'm just wondering, Chair, because we are late on time, if you wanted me to go on these, because these are not, they're not passing, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, we can, maybe we'll skip past those. I did also want to add the 2 confirmation hearings that are coming up. So we have GM 522, which will be heard tomorrow. This is for a seat on the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee, the one that's having a meeting on April 9th. Dr. Melanie Lau has been representing the public there. At this point, that is like one of the only situations where we can actually have like Q&A back and forth with the Navy. I think Dr. Lau has been doing an excellent job, and so I encourage everyone to please submit testimony in support of her confirmation. And then in addition, there's GM 583, which is to fill a seat on the Water Commission. The Water Commission is a state body that is empowered to protect our water supply statewide. They are focused specifically on like the groundwater and the stream water in terms of the amount of water, the quantity. And we have saw after the Red Hill crisis where, having access to these aquifers, once we have to like act quickly and turn aquifers off, the access to sufficient water supplies in other places starts to become a huge issue. So who sits on the Water Commission is very important. And unfortunately, the governor has appointed someone using a process that wasn't straight up. So it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing yet, but I encourage everyone to watch for GM 583. And you can go onto the state's Capitol website, capitol.hawaii.gov, and you can sign up for hearing notices. You can just type in the numbers, and it'll tell you all you need to know about each of the bills or the confirmation hearings. And you can see, all the people to need to be contacted who are decision makers on these matters. All right. Anything else around legislature? Go ahead.
Actually, there is
Yeah.
one PFAS bill that I wanted to discuss. Okay, because this one did go into one committee. I think, I'm not quite sure which one, but it was supposed to go into WAM, Ways and Means, and that's where it got stalled. Okay, and that's Senate Bill 539, and this is relating to toxic chemicals. So this one requires state agencies to establish environmental action levels for monitoring environmental toxins and pollutants. And it prohibits modifications of EALs unless procedural requirements are met, and that would include public notice and a public hearing. And it allows a resident to petition for modifications to an established EALs. I think we at CRIs, we've encountered that situation where the EALs for TPH apparently, well, it still is at 100 parts per million, whatever it is, whatever.
Per billion is the number we're
Bill.
using.
Okay, yeah. So parts per billion, but people are getting sick at 35 to 50 parts per billion. So this would be an opportunity for us if we wanted to petition the Department of Health and have them lower the parts per billion. I want to give you an example. Right now, I should say the previous PFOA and PFOS prior 2021, April 2021, was at 1,000 parts per trillion for PFOA and 600 parts per trillion for PFOS. Then in April 2021, it was lowered to 12 parts per trillion for PFOA and 7 parts per trillion for PFOS. Now, it makes me feel like we've been doing this for a while because now, after dealing with them, especially at FTAC, when are you going to meet up or standardize your EALs to match EPA's MCLs?
Okay, so EALs is environmental action levels and MCLs is
Maximum contaminant levels.
Okay.
And so December 2022, Department of Health did equalize the standard of the EALs to the EPA's MCLs, but it wasn't immediate. It took a while. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because we really need to standardize at minimum our Department of Health's EALs with the EPA's MCLs. Thank you.
If I may entertain a discussion, chair's privilege.
Okay.
Hopefully you guys will fire me after this. So seriously though, maybe we don't want to have the state's numbers match the federal numbers since we're not quite sure what's happening at the federal level in some, at least for our state level EALs, they're closer to us. Like these are people that we know Kathy, right? Like we can call her and be like, what is going on, right? So I guess, I don't know, I have a little bit of hesitation. It'd be one thing if we were equalizing these or getting them to line up and it was the federal government that was coming to match out the state's levels. But if it's a situation where we have the feds are doing whatever it is they do, and I don't necessarily want to have it be a situation where the state's numbers have to match the Fed's numbers.
If it's not as strict as what the federal numbers are, yes.
Yeah,
I
it's like
agree.
there are other examples in other laws, right, where the federal government can set a floor, right? Like this is the bare minimum that a state must do, and then states are empowered to do even more to be more protective. So yeah, I could be down with something like that. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes, that's it. I mean, there's a bunch more, like a
Yeah.
working group, the governor having a working group to study PFAS, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, this was not the session for that.
All right. Well, we got to invent a session for that because PFAS is literally like coming down the drain. So we've got to like figure out what we're going to do about that.
Well, that was a comment that came in. I mean, if there's no testing at Lake Wilson, that is a highly fishing recreational location.
Yeah.
So we need to stop that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Either stop the fishing or stop the military from wastewater treatment.
People got to
discharge.
fish. It's not the people's
That is
fault.
true.
Don't stop them from fishing, right? It's the we got to stop contaminating things. So,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. So I think we are now ready to move on to public testimony, right? Closing it out for all CRI members. I'm looking online. Does anybody have any last comments you want to make? All right. If there are people who would like to say something, members of the public, this is your time. Okay, we've got Susie. She's got a great presentation. I think maybe we'll start with that. But if other people want to line up, you can either, if you're in the audience, there are a couple people here. If you want to say something, this is the mic for public testimony. Please walk behind the camera and come around. And then if you're online, just put a comment or raise your hand, and our fearless leader behind the scenes will get you set up to provide a testimony. Okay, take it away, Susie.
Are the slides ready?
Yes,
Please.
we got a thumbs up. Go for it.
Where? I don't see
They're
it.
coming.
No? Okay. We'll just look at the people. Okay. My presentation is on the extended drinking water monitoring that has been going on since April 1st, 2024 through January 2025. And these are the total petroleum hydrocarbon detections that have been found. Next slide. Now, I made copies for everybody at the table, so you didn't have to squint. But what I will point out is that if you see Pua Pilo Court, that is from zone D3, which is Earhart. And as we've learned before, to get the total petroleum hydrocarbons, you add the oil plus the diesel. So if you see in the reported results, 47.4, and then the diesel was 62.3. When you add those together, the total TPH is 109.7. These numbers will make a lot more sense as I go on. The next one is ETCEL Court. That had 73 parts per billion. The next address is Mokupea Place. When you add those two together, 145 parts per billion for diesel and 245 parts per billion for oil, we have a total TPH of 390 parts per billion. And then the next one is from A3, also Capelina. The one before that was Capelina also. And there was a finding of 156 parts per billion oil. And then the last two lines from December 30th, 2024, they have not posted anything for January. That comes, well, it has the two of the same numbers, so we'll just call it 53.1 parts per billion. In January of 2025, there have been 4 complaints, all found non-detect. One from Capelina, one Ford Island, one AMR, and one Hickam. Now, the next page explains what went on this summer. And as we were talking about environmental action levels, the Department of Health did do something about them in the spring of 2024, which is updated 7/10/24. And this was produced by Roger Brewer. So the next page, if you remember the numbers that I just gave you, you will see that they have lowered their EALs. So for some of them where you have to add them together, regardless of what these numbers are, the one that came up as 390 was abysmal. Is this important? Well, before, I've always said that if we find one house that actually got on the Joint Base Pearl Harbor unsafe waters site, which is where all their data is, which is where every piece of data that I've ever presented comes directly from the Navy. These are the numbers that are on their site. Now, because we haven't had back dialogue with the Navy, I have not been able to present this to them because there was another presentation I did at the Board of Water Supply where, if anybody remembers the tech memo, Chris Waldron said that it didn't matter whether the residual chlorine was quenched or not. But back at the last FTAC, that was what he was promoting as the reason for all of these low-level detections. Well, a low-level detection, as defined by Navy, is 50 or below. And if I said, well, okay, maybe it's 55, but when I look at what I just presented to you, it's still not low levels. It's not low levels of TPH. And now they'll come back if they see this and say, well, it's not JP5. And I'll keep saying it. I'm not talking about JP5. I'm talking about total petroleum hydrocarbons. But they have been mixing up that dialogue as they do their reports. I didn't introduce myself. Myself is Susan Picola Davis, and I have been consistently presenting data both to the Board of Water Supply and to the CRI since the beginning. And I consistently have looked at all the data from the Navy because they stand by their website. So I stand by my presentations from their website. I'm also nominated myself for the CRI. They will be voting next week, March 5th. Are there any questions?
I'm looking at this one. Okay, it's like the third or fourth line on the other slide with the green on the side.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I know what you're looking
that
at.
big number. What is that?
You're looking at fire hydrants. Anything that has a FH. See, you guys are paying attention. Yes. The ones that I didn't really talk about are the fire hydrants, which if you see the one where it says 1,460, correct?
Yeah.
And you add that 92.4.
Yeah, that's a huge number.
That's huge.
Can you tell where that is based on these numbers? Like whose neighborhood?
Oh, D2,
hydrant?
that is Hickam.
Oh,
I know where all the neighborhoods are because that's the zones.
Hmm.
Okay. So yeah. I don't have any comments about the fire hydrants because we do not have the ability to go to the Navy and say, what's happening? The last time that I was able to do that was at the FTAC, the very last FTAC.
Which was in
now,
October.
the next one that's coming up in April, the extended drinking water monitoring time limit will have already run out. It ends in March. Okay. So they really don't have to do anything more. So I won't know if they're going to be putting any data on the Joint Base Pearl Harbor unsafe water site. But if they do, I always have a tendency to just, oh, let's see. And that's what I did here today. I said, this is some of the stuff that I've been reporting on since whenever I got my hands on this on the database, right? Yes. So Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go for it, Ann.
When they open up these fire hydrants, doesn't that water, that very polluted water, kind of flow down the road and down into the
What an
drains and then
excellent
down
question.
into the ocean and to our tiny little fish that are out there?
Yes. Yes, it does. And the Department of Health has given the Navy permission to do that.
Mm.
Okay, so yes, and
The permission you're talking about is when they were doing the flushing originally after they first admitted that the water is contaminated. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
All
I
right.
think
Well,
that would be really interesting to those people that live right next door, don't you?
yeah.
I've said
Oh,
it
thank you.
before, you know, these are people's neighborhoods, these are people's addresses. Yeah, I've always wanted to just go up to the door and knock and say, do you know this?
Mhm.
I haven't done it yet because I do enough.
Mhm. You do. Yeah, this is
I
an
do.
excellent summary
Thank you.
of data. Thank you very much for this. I really,
You're welcome.
really appreciate it. I'm just shocked.
Extended monitoring ends?
Say it again.
What
the
is the
last-
exact date that the extended
The
monitor-
exact date, from my understanding, would be March 31st, the end of March.
Okay.
That's my understanding. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
Yeah. So one thing we should do is engage with the Department of Health on the agenda for the next FTAC meeting, since that's the only place the Navy's showing up where the people can actually talk to them in a public setting where everyone can see. And we need to make sure that this stuff is on that agenda. Okay.
Definitely. And in addition to that, because of my last presentation at the Board of Water Supply, I will be able to challenge Chris Waldron's tech memo and the additional 164 pages of nonsense that they sent to Dr. Winkler to change his mind. Okay? So
I will bring my popcorn.
be
Are they
looking
quenching?
forward to it.
Are they quenching the
They don't have to.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
They don't
That
have
wasn't
to.
a thing. They made it a thing before, but it's not a thing anymore. Don't worry about it. Quenching, we don't need to do that.
No,
Yeah,
they-
I know. Screw your face up. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. All right, we've got more. Auntie Peggy has something that she would like to add from online. And then if there's anyone in the audience who'd like to testify.
All right, hi. I want to speak about the registry, but real quick, those addresses in Capelina, I could guarantee if you knocked on their doors, they would know. Capelina does not tell prospective residents or anybody new coming in here anything about the water. People don't know. And the other thing, when our lines were flushed, it went right out into our yard, and I said 100 feet from the ocean. So that's where all that went. So on behalf of the registry and Tara, I just had a couple comments. They're in the pre-enrollment phase now. They do have over 400 pre-enrolled, which is pretty exciting. Summer will be the full enrollment period when it gets underway, and they are hiring a new position, community engagement specialist. If you're interested, go to redhillregistry.org.
Thank you very much, Peggy. All right. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay.
Announcement as well. So on March 23rd, which is the day after World Water Day, the Campbell High School students are doing a water distribution in Eva at the park. So I wanted to let you folks know, Peggy, and that's hopefully I'll just email you the flyer when that comes out. So if you can, let the other residents know in Capilina.
Say the date again.
It's March 23rd. It'll be in the morning starting at about 9. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Please lower the mic and then please introduce yourself.
My name is Lacey Quintero. I'd like to thank the Board of Water Supply and the CRI for continuing the discussion, for being the ones who always show up. Thank you. I did have a question just to follow up on the different water treatment possibilities, and I had wondered if it would be possible to have both the GAC and ion exchange so that you could catch both the long chain and short chain PFAS.
Like, from a technical standpoint, sure. I think it'll be site specific of what type of technology we use, what type of contaminants we might be seeing on it. We know that it's not the same at every particular site. So if it, depending on what we might be seeing, it might merit something like that. And so that's kind of open right now to the discussion of what we're actually going to put there. So, but from a technical standpoint, yeah, we have seen situations where you put things in series like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent question. Thanks. We have other questions online? Question mark? Oh, hi, Meredith.
Hi, guys. It's good to see you. Can you hear me?
Nice to see you too. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for, holding a meeting more than you're actually required to. You're setting an example for the Navy of you have to go above and beyond, and you guys didn't even do anything wrong. So, just wanted to put that out there. First of all, I do want to ask about our EPA contacts. I know we kind of said at the beginning things are shifting. Are our EPA contacts for Red Hill, for the AOC, ACO, are they all the same or have they been changed? You don't necessarily have to answer that now, but I'd love to know in case we need to send an email to somebody. Are our contacts the same? And I just want to jump on top of what Jamie and Peggy talked about. The National Academies of Science consensus study is what it's called. It's all about health things, trying to give guidance to providers about what happened to us. A lot of the information that they're getting is straight from all these people sitting here and us. They're counting on us. So if we do not show up, they will not have the information. They will think it's not a problem anymore. I really think that they don't get the scale of what happened and what's continuing to happen. It's a very complex issue. So sharing that knowledge, we may all feel like we don't get it. It's all very technical sometimes. We all are not experts, but we have the experience of being here in these meetings like this. So I think it is so impossible to ask a lot of people. Last week, it was a 4-hour meeting, only was 3 hours, but to block off 4 hours, I have a full-time job. It was hard for me to get to it still and present comment. Everybody can't do that, but there is a way to email, provide feedback at any time. The director of that study is very, very accessible and encouraging of us doing that. The Department of Veteran Affairs has used the stamp of NAS to make decisions on presumptive diseases. So it's really important that we get this right. We're not going to get but one shot at a lot of these things. So I just wanted to point that out. There's a lot of people on the committee that are experts. These are people that we begged for when it happened to us. We Googled who's a toxicologist, who's this. These are top-notch folks that are willing to look into our problem set and give us some advice. And if this didn't happen to you, this is still very informative for science sake and for history's sake. It's important that we get this right. I think that is all I wanted to say. You can subscribe to their emails because they will have other public meetings and opportunities to come up, and they will have a town hall on island on Oahu at some point. I think June maybe. Don't quote me on that, but I really, really want to encourage you to still show up for that kind of stuff. And I know we're apprehensive because it's being funded by DOD, DHA, Department of Veteran Affairs, but it goes without saying we're going to have to be dealing with them. So let's just put our best face forward and share all the knowledge that we all gained. So thank you guys for being there.
Any questions? Are you there?
Just go ahead and ask your question, and if she's available.
Meredith, can you please explain the term that you use, presumptive?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry. So that is a lot of, for an example, the Camp Lejeune folks, right? They went through this water contamination, and a lot of those people have very similar conditions or diseases now. So they basically, the VA came to the national academies and said, hey, can you look at this contamination issue and these specific conditions? Now, if you go to get a disability status with the VA, if you were at Camp Lejeune during that time period and you have, for example, Parkinson's, you don't have to go through all the hoops to say that it was service connected. It is presumed because you were at Camp Lejeune for that time period and you have a certain condition that it came from Camp Lejeune. That's not just, the presumptive issue may not happen for us, but it's certainly a possibility. And it's also, military related, so just disability. But in general, that kind of power and their stamp on studying an issue like this, it can go to that level.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Kat McCallahan.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for joining
I
us.
just I appreciate everybody tonight, and I just want to reinforce everything that we spoke about the national academies, and just to even bring in the question has been posed that it is not outside the realm of possibility that even dependents and spouses, as many, I don't know how many know, I think the statistic is like only 20% of military service members serve long enough to receive a medical retirement anyway. So we're talking the vast majority plus civilians who won't ever serve long enough to have medical retirements, plus their dependents and spouses who dependents will age out. So this whole idea that potential down the road in years to come, if the national academies were to find significant concerns to then discuss with VA, it covers not only service members, but really dependents and civilians could be even considered for assistance. That's years down the road, but just want to plug that about the importance of that. And then just on the heels of just what that meeting at National Academies, hearing from Hawaii Department of Health discuss the fact that our families were acutely exposed and subacutely exposed for months. I would like to just challenge Hawaii Department of Health that their memorandums themselves, December 9th of 2021, everything speaks about the November 28th, 21 or November 20th date. And I would like to see some public memorandums be put out by Hawaii Department of Health toxicology to civilian doctors across the island. And I think most certainly DHA has the ability to do that as well. But just there locally, I think that would go a long ways to helping people who are seeing all these physicians who really have always understood it to just be November 20th and after. So anyway, I'm just going to plug that. And last thing I would just like to say is I still am curious to hear from what is Hawaii Department of Health and EPA doing to ensure that it took 3 years to get to where they're publicly discussing this information about how much how high the exposures were. We're talking that those tests that showed there were exceedances in the drinking water in summer and fall of 21 were taking 6-8 months to be reported. I want to know, just as a family that would be living on Hawaii, what are you doing to change the future? That if this event happens again, that you will know in real time test results and not months lag time. So I hope they're listening tonight, and I hope they will address this, because I still have no assurances. I've heard nothing mentioned about doing anything about the delayed reporting from summer through fall of 21. So that's all I had to say.
I mean, and to your point, Kat, especially since we knew that there was that leak in May, right? And, there's one news report about it, right? People knew about it. I remember trying to bang pots and pans and get people's attention about this release. And then to have these, to not have it be like, okay, now that we've had this release, we need to make sure that we are monitoring water supply better because we know this is a risk. And instead it took months and months, people were being exposed in June, July, summer timeframe. It just goes to, I just wanted to underscore your point, Kat. Thank you very much.
And I think just the idea that those detections in July were known when the November leak happened. So exceedance in drinking water was unsafe in July. Why wasn't that narrative shared with families and doctors then? Because many of us had symptoms that had begun after the May leak, and our doctors didn't make the connection. We didn't make the connection. So it is kind of mind-boggling that you could go months. They already knew some of these results were exceedances. Why was that never entered into the narrative?
Yeah, masterclass in gaslighting. That's why.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but
I want to hear from
thank you for
them.
your tenacity. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. All right,
Thank y'all for your
Jamie,
hard
you had
work.
your hand up earlier. Do you want to say anything still?
Kat touched on it or hit on it. I was going to talk about the same thing with the National Health Academies with the spouses and dependents. They are the ones that were the driving force in order to get the PACT Act and presumptive care recognized. You know, there's, as long as you can, if we get enough people talking about their symptoms and engaging, and sorry, I'm having breathing issues. If we can get this proven down the road, the long-term exposure, the onion's already being peeled back, we would be able to, as long as you can show that you're with your service member, whether you're married, not, and your family was exposed at the time, like with the PACT Act, families would have better chances of continuing long-term care. And that is what is really important for everybody, regardless of where you're at in your service career. Heading down the road, we need to be looking at 10, 15 years from now. So we make sure that everybody is covered, because this is unfortunately not an issue. I believe not an issue that's going to go away for any of us that were exposed for this subacute and acute, which is probably going to turn into chronic exposure. That's all.
Thank you very much, Jamie. All right, I'm going to put a last call for public testimony. We are at 7:30. So we do technically have a little more time. If there were things that we cut short in order to get to public testimony that you want to say. Okay, Melody, you're on the list. Okay, hang on. Let's see. So is there anybody else online who wants to rate? Okay, we've got, oh, yes, I see you now. Michelle, go ahead. You're still muted if you're talking.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
There we go.
Aloha,
Perfect. Hi,
everyone.
welcome.
Great meeting. Everyone has been so informative. I just wanted to send out big mahalos to all of the information. I'm curious about the EPA. Do they not receive from the United States Navy a fine every time they do not attend a CRI meeting?
Question. Thanks for bringing that up. So, yes, they were fined for not attending the December meeting after they told us they would come so long as we solemnly swear to follow their ground rules. We solemnly swear to follow their ground rules, and they didn't show up, so they got fined. It's my understanding that the Navy is contesting that $5,000 fine. It's $5,000. It's like so pathetic. I was like, it's more effort and paperwork, and like poor people will have to make this argument. It costs more money than to just pay it. But yeah, so the EPA is a little MIA right now. This particular meeting right now is not considered an official Navy has to come meeting, right? So part of the new ground rules, the changes that they made to the AOC said that the Navy only has to attend one meeting with us per quarter. And we were before there were the executive orders from the Trump administration, we were working with the EPA to schedule a meeting with the Navy for early in February. And unfortunately, we didn't get that figured out before they were told to not speak to the public anymore. So to answer the earlier question about whether our contacts are the same, I think some of them are the same, but I haven't actually communicated with anybody at the EPA, so I can't confirm that. I do know, so like Martha Guzman, for example, she was a political appointee, so she is no longer there. And Meredith Berger with the Navy was and a political appointee, so she's no longer there. But I'm pretty sure that Amy Miller is still there, and Jamie Marincola. there's a handful of people, Alejandro and all those guys that we had been working with quite a bit up to this point. I don't have any information to say that they're gone. So fingers crossed. And hopefully there will be, we, like I said, are aiming for the March 27th meeting, and we will email them and hopefully we can get something worked out. But yes, if the EPA deems it an official meeting that the Navy must attend, their 1 per quarter meeting, then yeah, they would technically, and the Navy chooses not to attend, then yes, they would technically be subject to a fine. As we have learned, the fine will be small and they will contest it. So it's not like it's necessarily changing their behavior or, helping solve the problem in any way. So,
Right. My follow-up question to that is, what does the EPA do with said funds when they receive it? Because $5,000 might be an insignificant amount to the Navy, but to my community, who we've been doing a community jug exchange, it could buy a lot of Brita filters. It could really help out the people who need help.
It's an excellent point, Michelle.
It would be nice if those funds were reappropriated back into the affected communities.
Yeah, it would be nice if the fines could be something that a pool of money that we could help to put to good use. Yes, I would love to buy filters for everybody in Capulina Beach homes. That would make me feel really good. And unfortunately I don't know what happens where that money goes if it ever does get paid. But we'll ask and we'll find out and we'll see. Maybe we can advocate with the EPA to spend that money in a particular way. We can work on that. But I do want to manage expectations. Like, at any point they could just pull the plug on the AOC and say, we're not doing this anymore. So we should manage our expectations. You have a comment? Go ahead. Turn your mic on and make sure your face is closed.
I think the $5,000 goes to pay down our national debt.
Are you kidding me? You're kidding, right? You're being funny? No, you're being serious. I mean, you're laughing, but are you being serious?
I think probably all these funds that the various regulatory agencies are taking in, I think they'll be long gone to good purposeful use, and probably will be put into that little fund of everything to pay down the national debt.
Yeah, that's really disappointing. Maybe we can advocate directly to the EPA to get that money used in a more immediately helpful way. Okay, cool. All right. Are there any other comments? Anybody online or in the studio who would like to say anything? CRI member or member of the public or guest speaker? Anybody? Elima, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, are we clear to speak more publicly about the Navy's decision to reopen their wells? Is there some sort of, has that been made public information? Just making sure.
Okay, so the steps that I know that is publicly available online is the Navy saying that's what they want to do. I recently learned that it's my understanding that the Department of Health has approved that. So we'll do some follow-up communications with Department of Health staff and see if we can get that documented in a way that helps. At the very least, people should be asking questions like, neighborhood boards, anything. We'll just
So maybe
figure out
we
how
need
we
a
can.
press release, and maybe we need like a outreach day. Maybe we need to do something in conjunction with the water distribution. Maybe we need to do an outreach day to let people know, because people are not aware.
Yeah, especially for those families who have moved in since, after the crisis.
And no notice.
Yeah, there's not a lot of notice we've learned. So that is a good point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Helani.
Add to that, because I know a little bit about it. The Navy has placed a GAC farm for treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's going to be their selling point until they actually build the treatment facility.
So where is the GAC farm? Do you know?
Gacking around Red Hill.
Okay.
It's a national security.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes,
Actually,
Joyce, go ahead.
The GAC farm that is mentioned, that's to treat Aea Halava Shaft. This is the Navy's Aea Halava Shaft. You can actually see it if you drive down, I believe, Halava Heights Road It's
Okay.
at the end.
Okay.
I did present at our board meeting sometime in December, and I showed a photo of that.
And so that's the GAC farm that is a reference to that they're going to be using to treat the water that's coming out of that Halava shaft.
I believe so, and
Yeah.
there's about 12 JC units there.
Okay. And do you know anything about like the extent to which the Navy's monitoring the, the way Mark kind of described, like how, you like kind of keep up with it as it's going down and you realize, oh, there's still PFAS showing up later down in the bed of carbon. Do you know anything about their procedures?
I do not know,
Okay.
actually. I know
Sorry, I didn't
they.
mean to put you on the spot.
No. Yeah, I know there's been talks about this treatment, even a treatment for their Red Hill shaft, but we have not gotten too much information about it.
Okay. All right. Well, we will do whatever sort of public communications we can, see what kind of information we can get. Tune back in next month and maybe we'll have more information for everybody.
Can I ask one last question? Does Board of Water Supply have a particular opinion or about
Position?
position about the reopening of the Navy wells?
Be careful, Joyce. You'll be accused of misinformation.
We don't know. Yeah, I think this is more of a question for Ernie, but
Thank
it
you.
definitely, there's going to be risk, and we're not too sure what that risk is going to be.
So there is a risk to reopening the shaft.
If they reopen the shaft, that's essentially drawing water towards, more west side.
Right.
So
And there's not any clear delineations between these aquifers, these shafts, right? So as we saw in the depiction with the green, everything is interconnected, correct? At a certain point.
correct.
Okay, just making clear. Okay.
Right.
So just a clarification too. So whose shaft is that? Is that like under Board of Water Supply or that's Navy?
That's the Navy's.
So the Navy has Red Hill and Halava?
That's the name of, yeah,
And then the Board of Water Supply also has.
a halava
I'm
shaft.
sorry,
Oh, so
No,
there's two.
yes, that's
Halava shafts.
correct.
So I was getting confused.
So
Okay.
yes, the Board of Water Supply, we have a halava shaft at the Halava Xeriscape Garden, and the Navy also own a shaft that's called Aiea Halava. So yeah, it's gets confused a little bit, but they're separate, correct?
Well, they're separate, but how far apart are they from one another?
Ernie closed down Halava shaft to be very cautious about not getting any of the contamination inside of the Board of Water Supplies shaft. So that has been closed. Now they're talking about opening the Navy Aiea Halava shaft. And there are some concerns.
So the Red Hill, where is Red Hill, the Red Hill well in comparison to this? Or is that the Red Hill well?
Yeah, do this without a map. Good luck.
Let's see. I think actually my presentation had a map.
Rosalie, would you be able to pull up?
Is that
Tassos?
that line between the pink and the purple?
No, actually, let's see.
That was a good one.
Slide number 12.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
if we can pull it up.
Slide number 12.
Slide number 12, please. Wizard and behind the scenes.
Oh, she's pulling it. Great.
There we go.
Thanks,
Brilliant.
Rosalie.
So the wells circled in red, those are Board of Water.
Board of Water Supply, okay.
Correct. So Halava shaft is on the right. And if you notice, there's two area with the blacked out redactions. The one on the right, that is Red Hill shaft. And the one on the left, the little small rectangle, that is Aiea Halava shaft. And both of the ones that's blacked out are owned by the Navy.
I just want to clarify, they're not owned by the
Right.
Navy.
Oh,
The
sorry,
Navy
sorry.
uses
They-
them
yes,
with
they-
our
They
permission.
lease that land from us.
My mistake.
You mean they stole the land?
Right.
from us.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Well, that was actually a really good follow-up question, just to bring in the point about how close that shaft is that they are reopening and to the municipal water supply. And we know that they interact with each other. And so I'm concerned that we don't know enough about how them using the Navy IAEA Halaba shaft will affect the other shafts that we are trying to not contaminate.
Correct. And actually, this slide shows one of the many simulations put together by the Navy's groundwater flow model. So each one of those lines, excuse me, is a scenario of contaminant traveling from the Red Hill bulk storage facility, and you can kind of see that it has a flow of westerly flow, and then there's that little area up that can get up to our Halava shaft had it continue pumping at its normal average 12 million gallons per day. So if I guess the concern would be if Aya Halava shaft, the Navy's Aya Halava shaft, if they turn that on, would that create more pull towards that west direction? We are not too sure. And again, these are all simulations, so it's just model runs of what could happen.
Joyce, can you also talk about the red dye University of Hawaii study and how they've increased the water flow going through? Do you know that? I thought you presented that the
Yes,
other
I
day.
presented briefly on it. I just found the Manoa's Red Hill Tracer Study website. They actually put out, I believe, a press release or information release page. So if you Google Red Hill Tracer Study, that should be one of the first items that you'll find. And it is information page that goes over the process. So the tracer was already placed in one of their monitoring wells, monitoring well 8. It's a total of 50 pounds of the rhodamine water tracer dye mixed with 5,000 gallons of water 5,000 gallons of water from their Waiawa shaft. And they injected that into the monitoring well number 8 over a 6-day period.
Can you talk about the increase of the
And
use
yes,
of the water?
so after they injected it, they increased the Red Hill shaft. So Red Hill shaft is not currently used for their drinking water, but they are still pumping it and treating it. I think if, 'cause remember, they used to pump and treat and then dump into Halava stream. So it was reduced to 1.8 million gallons per day. But as a result of the tracer study, they increased it back to 4.2 million gallons per day as a way to maximize the collection of those tracer dye.
So the idea is to bring the usage of the Red Hill shaft back up to what it was.
Close to what it was, and just
Okay.
to see where the tracer goes.
Okay. Wow, you're a wealth of information. That was very, very useful. Thank you.
I was just remembering what I read from the website, but yes.
Thank you. All right.
One last question.
You said that 3 times already,
So-
just for the record.
I'm doing a Columbo. So hypothetically, if they did reopen, what is the time frame we're looking at and how much time do we have to be prepared? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it is that we found out just before this meeting that
It's a matter of national security.
Yeah. So I think we should assume that it's open, that's being used.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, ladies, we did an excellent job of eating up the last 20 minutes and we thought we were going to end early. Haha. It's my job to keep you on your toes. All right. Thank you very much for coming. You guys were very, very useful and very helpful. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you all for sitting through online. I hope you found this meeting useful and hopefully we get to see each other again next month. Right on. Take care. Aloha.
Aloha.
No problem. No
I just
problem.
love the presentation.
Thank you.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I
Glad to
enjoyed
help.
the